All right, I'll call the school district, oh, we ready? Sorry. Call the school district Board of Education to order at 6:32 PM. Can I get a roll call, please? Marion?
Present.
Here. Present.
Ryan Kugler?
Here.
Marion Vinny? Here. Katie Worley?
Here.
Beth Yurts?
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion for tonight's agenda approval with flexibility to move 5E below 5I, the state budget letter approval below board reorganization.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ryan, seconded by Marion. Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of agenda approval with flexibility say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Any comments tonight? We have no visitor comments tonight, so we will move right on ahead to district highlights with Jim.
While Kyle's coming up, we're going to start with the district top 10. We do have 2 other topics under district highlights, but that's where we'll start.
Well, good evening, everybody. Over the past X number of years, the Capital Conference is always honoring the top 10 students in the graduating class in terms of GPA overall on a 4-point scale. In the past, they used to do a big celebration for all of the Capital Conference's students in one location, and that became a very big issue because of what they have going on. And these are very busy kids for the month of May. So during the pandemic, we transitioned to have them come in, and we had teachers give our presentations and just kind of give a quick speech on each one of the 10. However, this year we are going to just try and do it a little bit differently, as they are all coming off of earning a bunch of money. Last week on Wednesday, we had our scholarship night last Wednesday, which was fantastic, which all these kids also got honored. So tonight what we're going to be doing is I'm just going to give a brief talk about what they are doing after high school, and they will be awarded their Capital Conference plaque. We're going to get a nice picture taken of them, and then all the parents can just take pictures. We're just going to get just a parent picture, too. No kids, just parents, all right? So if we're ready, and then we'll have a quick ceremony and just kind of celebrate them as these guys continue to get celebrated for all the success they've had throughout their time here in Belleville, and this is just another one for all these kids. So they have beautiful pictures up there of them, and look good. We have 6 of them in attendance tonight. 2 are out sick. 1 is playing baseball up in the field still, and that game is taking much longer. And then 1 was stepped up to help out the golf team in the last minute, and he is still playing golf right now. So, and hopefully maybe even moving on to the next round. So, but I'm going to highlight our 6 here, and when you guys, I'm going to talk about you quick and then bring you up, and you're going to get your plaque. And we're going to start talking with our first student in alphabetical order. This is in no specific order. Adeline Dansgrass. Addie is going to be going to MATC next year to start. She has a goal of studying mechanical engineering and starting at MATC and then transferring to somewhere, wherever it takes her afterwards. So please bring up our first top 10, Adeline Dansgrass. I promised them they wouldn't have to speak. I'm going to go for our students that are here first in order, and then I'll hop back to some of the ones that were not able to be here. Our next student we're going to talk about real quick is Kylie Humpke. Kylie Humpke is going to be attending the University of Madison next year. She's going to start with a biochem major with a goal of attending pharmacy school. Our next Capital Conference Top 10 is Kylie Humpke. Lillian Hanna next year is also going to be attending the University of Madison. She is going to start with an undergrad in some kind of political science with a goal of being into pre-law program. And her goal is after and she gets into the law program, she wants to focus on something in constitutional law. Our Capital Conference Top 10 person, Lillian Hanna. Now we're going to talk about a proud education student. Lily Palmer is going to attend UW La Crosse next year. and her goal is to get a major in K-12 education with a music focus to start. But wants to move on past the schools, and her goal is actually to end up being a college professor for vocal music. Capital Conference Top 10 person, Lillian Palmer. Our last two here in attendance today for our Capital Conference Top 10 are also our valedictorian and our salutatorian. Again, those are two students who had 4.0s. We actually were honored to have 4 in total valedictorians, all with 4.0s from our top 10. I believe our top 10 had a cutoff of like 3.91 or 92 as a GPA. It was extremely competitive. This is a very impressive group overall. And I'm going to start with talking about Mallory Thompson, who did end up being our valedictorian by the 4th tiebreaker. So our tiebreakers go by overall GPA first, which we had 4. Then it's our regular ACT score that we use, but we use it for the junior assessment because it is the most equitable one that we can control. The one that all juniors take in March, and we had a tie at the top between the two of them. So then our next one is we take the top individual of the 4 scores and the highest score. And once again, there was a tie at the top between the two. So we had to go to the 4th and final tiebreaker I had, which was just the highest non-one. And by 1 point, it was awarded to Mallory Thompson. But both Mallory and Reichel will be represented at graduation. They're both going to get a chance to speak at graduation because they've had excellent years. So it was a very unfortunate thing, but still 2 great kids. So first we're going to start with talking about Mallory Thompson, who's going to be attending UW-Madison next year. And she's going to start in focusing on the statistics field. And she herself is very excited to see where that leads her and what her passion is moving forward. But she knows she's going to start in statistics. Come on up, Mallory Thompson. And last but definitely not least, you've had the honor of hearing from him every single month during the school board, as Riker was also one of our student representatives. Riker is on his way to UW-Madison as well. He is also going to be focusing for pre-law, and then his goal in the future is actually to do some kind of law in the sports world. So come on up, our last person, Capital Conference Top 10, Riker Swenson. Just real quick so everyone knows, the other 4 that were not able to be here tonight, but also deserve the representation, is Brennan Keys, Evan Thomas, Aiden Perry, and Zella Palmer. You can see their pictures up there as well. But for the ones in attendance, please give one last round of applause for our Capital Conference Top 10. Board, any questions for our top 10?
No questions, but I'm absolutely blown away by everything that you guys have done and accomplished, and cannot wait to see what you do in the future. I'm very excited for you guys, so thank you so much.
At this time, I will actually be excusing our top 10 and their parents to go down for a quick celebration in our cafeteria. So thank you once again, parents, for coming here, and our top 10. Thank you very much.
So you can tell the end of the year is coming. We have lots of different celebrations. So our next one is going to be Chris Meyer is joining Kelsey to talk about the kindergarten work at the Sugar River Senior Center. Again?
Nothing new there. No, we had a unique opportunity this year trying to connect. This was something Jim asked me about, how we connected with the senior center. And so we had talked about bringing seniors into school first. And I said, well, I feel like our school is a little bit of a death trap for people with not great mobility. So maybe we start with taking some students to the senior center. And I worked with Angie Markhart to set some things up down there. And so this started in March. We had our first kindergarten class, and those are the pictures you see up there. So they've gone once a month, but I'll let Chris tell you a little bit more about it. And I asked the whole kindergarten team, and they gladly nominated Chris to be here tonight. So
Basically threw me under the bus. Not gonna lie. We've kind of said the name of it is Wildcat Wonders, and like Kelsey said, it kind of started with the thought of how can we connect with the community and work with them, and so Kim Hedeman kind of spearheaded. Then moving on from Kelsey, she's one of our other kindergarten teachers, and she connected and talked to the senior center and see what day was the best, and we ended up, she was the first group to go. This year we've gone 3 times. The first time she went on her own, and then we've gone 2 classes at a time. As teachers, we planned 4 different activities for them to participate in, and then we rotate through those centers in about 15 minutes, so in an hour. Some of the activities we've done, we do manipulatives like Play-Doh and Legos and things like that. We had some coloring activities, and then we always do a craft activity. And then usually it's been 1 to 2 seniors at the table with the kindergartners, and they have great conversation, and it's been a really great outreach. Then the craft activity that we did, then we leave down at the senior center. So then it's up on the windows. For example, when I went down with Mrs. Keeler's class, and we did we were in April, so we had Earth Day, so we did an Earth Day project. And when I drove by, I could see all their little Earth Day pictures in the windows that they had hung up for us. So this year, all of us have gone this spring, like Kelsey said, and next year we had such a great time. We plan on doing it again next year, and next year we will get to go. We have it monthly, and we'll go down, and each class will get to go twice down to the senior center. So it was a great outreach, and the kids really enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll get a few more volunteers, but it was wonderful. You have any questions or anything?
Who has more fun, the kids or the seniors or the teachers?
I think it's kind of equal, but the volunteers definitely had a good time. And some of them it's fun because some like have connections already with some of the volunteers that were there, and they're like, their eyes get really big and like, what are you doing here? Like there was a neighbor or there was one that went to church with them, and she's like, yeah, I know him, and he was a little shy, but yeah, so it's great.
I love that. Thank you for kind of this community building and outreach and finding a bridge between our littlest students and our most senior members of our community. I'm sure that's just a beautiful thing.
we're hoping this will grow next year into like adopt a grandparent or mentoring. We had some needs this year for some senior mentors to come into school, and so Angie and I are going to work on that right away here too. But it was like great education for seniors as well. We have a number of students with disabilities and varying needs, and seniors were asking questions. Like Jenny DeLorme was there the first time when I was down there, and she did such a great job explaining, like, well, this is how you can interact with this student, or this is how you can do this. So it was just, it was really special. So glad we could do that again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, we have the Paris trip. So Mr. Bussey and Ms. Knutson and the students. And we have to flip over give us just a second. You can start, but we're going to get to your presentation up.
Mr. Bussey, teach science here. I was kind of the one that got the crazy idea about the Paris trip, and I just want to say thank you for giving the kids the opportunity to broaden their horizons on art, architecture, science, and history. So thank you, thank you.
I'm Miss Knutson, another teacher here. I think you've seen me before. But yeah, we have 4 of our traveling students with us, and then the 2 parents that came with. And our presentation just kind of goes over specifically like their different experiences and takeaways. That's a picture of the whole group for our first slide there.
My name is Adeline Hendrickson. My name is Adeline Hendrickson. I'm a junior, and I decided to go on the Paris trip for my spring break. I went on the New York trip previously, and that was a lot of fun. I thought it'd be cool to go on another school trip. And this is a smaller group. The New York trip, I went with like 100 other kids. So this one was nice to like get the smaller group experience. Um, so our group, we had 2 staff members, 8 students, and two parents. Our trip was 9 days. We had 2 days of travel. Of course, there's the long plane ride and just like the bus and everything getting into Paris. And then we had 7 days in Paris. We traveled to the countryside and we saw a whole bunch of like different aspects. So it wasn't all just in the city. So it was cool to see some more sides of just France. Um, we visited a whole bunch of places. Like I'm not gonna go through all of them because there's just like a whole huge list. But I think one of my favorite aspects was going to see all of just the little things that aren't super huge tourist attractions and just being able to wander the streets and find my own attractions. That was pretty cool. And we got to go with like our own groups of friends and break off. We always had our phones and had a group chat, so we were always like safe and it was fine. We had contact with an adult, but it was cool to just be able to have that independence. Um, so these are some of the pictures I took. We all had a shared photo album that we could all put pictures into, and I think at the end of the trip I looked and there was like 2,000 pictures on the photo album. So I mean, when I was going through to make my Instagram post after that, my spring break trip, I had a lot of pictures to go through. That took a few days to go through. But we they're in the top right corner. We did ride the metro, the subway, to get to a few places, and one of the stops was Belleville. So of course we had to take a picture with that. That was pretty cool. And then the one is me and Sarai and Jimena on the top of the Eiffel Tower. It was super windy, so that's why it's like our hair is just everywhere. And there's a cathedral kind of towards the bottom right. A lot of stained glass, and it's just so pretty. And then we also went with a group from a different school. I think it was West Virginia, and they had like a lot more kids than we did. So the teacher, it's me and Abe Chavez, and then a teacher from the other school in the top left. But it was cool to like meet other people too, and see like just other people talk about other people's experiences in their schools, also in the United States, but we were out of the country. So I don't know, it's just cool, like the different dynamics. And then this was actually this is the second to last day for us because the other group left the day before us. But our tour guide lady who was kind of with us the whole trip is the one with the blonde hair right above Soraya. And her name was Jojo. She was awesome. It was really comforting to have like a friend. She was just really sweet. I had a lot of fun. So yeah.
Hello. Yeah, it was just a really great experience, and you can see up there. I just really love like old churches. I think they're super beautiful, and there were just tons of them there. So I got 2 pictures there. There's all of us sitting in one of them. I don't remember what it was called, but it was like still in downtown Paris, but it was like kind of out of the way. And then there's on the very far left, there's a painting there. That actually was in a location not on the list, because we had a lot of free time to wander and just like find things, and we found this like free art museum, and that painting is of Ophelia from Hamlet, which we read in AP Lit, so I thought that was pretty cool. And we also got to see a whole bunch of museums. This was the museum of like the history of medical instruments, so it was just like a very small museum inside of a university, but it was super cool. They had a whole bunch of like paintings that were donated, and then in the middle there's some sort of like pseudoscience electrical devices that were used, and then on the very top left there were like bone saws, so they would use those to cut their limbs. And then we also went to the Museum of Paleontology and Comparative Anatomy, which was super cool. It was just like a whole bunch of like dinosaurs and all sorts of like animals and stuff. Yeah, really great experience overall, and I'm super glad I went.
Hi, my name is Emily Fahrenkrug, and I only have 3 pictures up there, but I will still talk about them. Um, the fourth picture on the left is one of the many amazing restaurants that we got to go to. It had amazing cuisine, and our tour guide Jojo just knew all the best places. One of the first nights that we got to go and eat there, we had gone to like this little place that was right outside Notre Dame, but still very small, and it was just so wonderful to go and finally see everything. The middle picture is the Eiffel Tower all lit up at night. We got to go and see it for the first time when we were going on a boat tour. And we got to go and have a wonderful thing. The tour guide was the tour guide even for the boat was super funny. And the far photo on the right, you can see Soraya, me, and Violet and Addie peeking out behind Violet. That was the green boxes. The green boxes were originally going to be removed due to the Paris Olympics when they were going to go and like be boating in the Seine River and such. But there was such a big outroar to go and keep the boxes that they decided to go and keep them. And there's now tote bags selling in them that is basically keep the green boxes. Addie actually has one of the things. Kind of jealous of that. One of my favorite memories that I don't have a photo of is on one of the first days we got to go to a little cafe in Paris. It was just, and we just, when we walked down, it was me, Jimena, Addie, and Soraya, just us girls. And right outside Notre Dame, there's just a little cafe. We got in there, we sat down, and I remember that Addie, when she treated us all to like little drinks and such, I had a hot chocolate, one of the best hot chocolates of my life. And I'm forever thankful and in debt to Addie for that. I know that it was super fun and we were all close, and the trip to Paris has ignited what I want to do, and I want to go and travel. Next year, I will be traveling to Paris because I had such a good time with going to France. Going to Germany. Oh, well, I can always go back. Well, I'm going to Germany, Austria with Frau next year, and because of the amazing experience I had during my time in France, I will be definitely going back sometime within my life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jimena. No. Okay. Oh,
You're good. Take a breath. You were here.
okay, I need it. Sorry. I don't know. I've been dreaming to go to Paris since I was a little girl. Oh. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was apparently chocolat. It was really good. Yeah. I yeah. It was from I watched this show named Emily in Paris that I've been watching over and over and over and over. And yeah. So I felt like in the movie. Yeah. Yeah. And we were on top of the Eiffel Tower, and that was really fun. It was really windy. It was really cold, but it was beautiful. The view from the whole city. Beautiful. Yeah. The bottom. That, oh, that's on the plane. Yeah. Yeah. Because we watch. Yeah. It was a really long flight.
I just wanted to add, Jimena, she knew a little bit of French, and that was very helpful because the rest of us knew none. And there was a few times where we would just like have to ask her, "Hey, how do you say this?" And it was very helpful to have Jimena there. In fact, one time we had to go to the bathroom because they don't really have public restrooms in Paris or France or whatever. And we had to go to the bathroom, so we like looked it up on Google Maps, and it came up with like bathroom tiles, but we didn't realize that, so we went to like a bathroom tile store. Anyways, they did not speak English at the bathroom tile store. They were like, "Why is a group of teenage girls coming here?" I was just like, bathroom. And they were able to point it out to us. But it was helpful to have Jimena there to be able to help us because there were times when it got a little bit confusing with just the language barrier.
Yeah. Because I've been learning French for a little bit, Duolingo every day.
Yes.
For a year. Yeah. So that was helpful. Yeah. Yeah. And it's similar to Spanish, so that's the other thing. Yeah.
So thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. We had a lot of fun, and I mean personally, I'm not sure. I guess I'm speaking on my own behalf, but I really hope other people get to do this too. Because it was such an awesome experience. I know it can be a little bit costly just because I'm traveling in general. I think it was just an amazing experience, and it was cool to be able to like form connections with other people that I don't usually talk to at school, but they're still walking around the halls.
And me and Violet got food poisoning.
They did. They did get food poisoning, but it was okay. It was okay. We made it work. They had to miss. Sorry, just a little bit of talking. They got food poisoning. But Violet was able to go to the Eiffel Tower after because she missed the Eiffel Tower because she was growing up. But we made it up, and we were able to ride an Uber and get her to the Eiffel Tower later on. So it was just flexibility, and it was so awesome. Yeah, it was really cool, just like knowing that they truly cared for us. So. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Did the chaperones have anything they wanted to add about the trip? Was it the greatest chaperone experience ever?
Personally, I really liked, and I think I'm going to talk for Mr. Bussey here. I'm going to say that we enjoyed the mix of students that went. Like Addie said, like they aren't ones that would walk the halls necessarily together here. And so it was nice to see all these different personalities come together, and they were awesome. So were our parents. They were awesome too.
I'm Doug Fernkrug. I'm Emily's dad, Crystal's husband. Going there was an unbelievable experience, and going with Mr. Bussey and Miss Kay, they opened up doors for us that normally we wouldn't see. We went to places that our tour guides had never been to. And that's saying something because I think one of them was actually Parisian. So some of these places were open just to us. The museum with the medical instruments was just for us. They opened up early, and they opened those doors. I'd also like to say we went to Museo d'Orsay, and it's one thing to see Starry Night hanging directly in front of you. It's another thing to smell the paint. And you could smell the paint from Starry Night. We saw Monet's, we saw Renoir, we saw things that you see in books, and that's all you see. You could see them. We were a foot away from them, not behind glass. They were right there, and just having that visceral experience was incredible. And a great group of students, absolutely wonderful educators that led us on this, and honestly, trip of a lifetime. Absolute trip of a lifetime. So if you have a chance to travel with the kids, and also that, I know it's a really specific thing, please do. And you'll see us in the picture down in the catacombs. There's a chance that they will be closing that in a few short years just because of people stealing bones. So Mr. Bussey worked really hard to make sure that we got there. And we were one of the last tours in there, so it was at night, and it was extra spooky and wonderful. But yeah, incredible experience. Thank you very much for the school district for setting this up, and it was honestly, it was a trip of a lifetime for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. All right. I believe that was everything for district highlights. Amazing district
A lot of
highlights
district
this month.
highlights.
Like,
Lot
you
to
did a great
celebrate.
job. This is, I don't know, it's going to be
When I
really
said
hard
it took a
top.
while to get the board packet out, you can see like there's a lot of moving parts here, but good parts.
Yes,
Great
all
part.
good stuff. All right. Next up is correspondence. What do we got there?
Yep, I shared with the board some emails we received from Teacher Appreciation Week, so you can see those attached in the board content. Some really, we just finished that great week of the year, which also culminates with Mother's Day, right? It's just in the education world, it's almost the perfect week. We also received a really nice card through Kelsey from Grandparent Breakfast Week. That was started on April 29th through May 2nd. So they split up over 4 days and really was a lovely experience. I was able to participate in one of those days. So you'll see that note as well. And then I did show the little clip in the notes from the Post Messenger Recorder from Monticello thanking 3 different districts, or actually 4 different districts, for the passing of their principal, Mark Gustafson. It's just his diagnosis and passing just happened so closely. It was pretty heart-wrenching for their community. They also shared another thank you that I'm just going to pass around here. They wanted our folks to be able to see as well. So just everyone who's listening or here, just keep Monticello on your minds because they've been going through quite a bit lately.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Next up, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Marion, seconded by Ryan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take it up for a vote. All those in favor of consent agenda approval say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Up next in reports, we have the School to Career Annual Report on the Youth Apprenticeship Program and Wildcat Work Experience Program.
So Teresa Garley is going to step up with Aaron Nekash from the New Glarus Home to talk about the program, the School to Careers program, which really focuses around the work experience and youth apprenticeship. And before she starts, I will tell you that this program continues to grow. And given our size, the numbers she has in the program is it is very impressive. So I'm excited to hear your report.
Thank you. Well, they don't have a lot of cool pictures, but when I was sitting and listening to the top 10 and looking at the highlights of the trip, I was just thinking about how it's very impressive that we continue to offer opportunities for students to go outside of a comfort level and extend our classroom, because really that's what all of that is. And you end up having an appreciation for things that maybe aren't the normal way to learn. And it tends to spark an interest. And really that's, and I segue over to youth apprenticeship and work experience, really that's what that program does too. It's an extension of our classrooms for the students that choose to participate. And we're entrusting these employers and mentors to expose them to some entry-level skills that have been designed by professionals in their field and coordinated through Department of Workforce Development. And through that experience, which is paid, and being able to constantly have the relationship with the school, some of our parents have said to me recently when I've had end meetings, what I like is that my child gets to go out and experiment with this career area to see if it's just going to be a hobby, it's an interest, or it's really the direction that I want to keep going in my post-secondary pursuit. And that, and at the same time there's a teacher there for this person or for the students to come and vent and ask questions, because let's face it, you're out of your comfort level in a lot of these positions, and you don't always know what you don't know, and some of it gets monotonous because it's entry level, and some of it's exciting, but you need someone to run it past. And then the parent said, my child's also making a good amount of money, and I can help them with the financial end of how to invest this and what to do. So one of the things I've always appreciated is that we do have a program where the parents have to be incorporated into it. A minimum of at least 3 times during the apprenticeship's year, and 6 times if it's 2 years, because they are an integral part in what's happening and what's next. I did put on my report, which you probably have read, and Mr. Schmidt alluded to, we do continue to add student enrollment. And it is a diverse group, which I like. We have students that are 4.0 students, and we have students that earn Cs, and we have students with IEPs and 504 plans that speak different languages, and some that have a different kind of a disability, whether it's a physical disability. And I think that we need to understand that this is a program for all students, and it was always designed that way. Sometimes there's misinformation that it's, just the trades or just culinary. And I don't even like saying just the trades. That takes a really quite an intelligent person to do those kinds of things. They have added pathways to the options for teenagers. Now, that doesn't mean we can get an employer just like that all the time. That's where the team comes in, and people who know people, we work together to build a network. And that's part of the process I take students through from start to end. And if any of you want to know that process more deeply, I would be happy at some point, if you're newer to this whole program, to sit down and kind of walk you through what the program, kind of how it works. But in the short run, one of the things I've appreciated this year is some of the students are actually taking ownership of the program. And they would have been my second-year students. They came to me and wanted to help market it. They wanted logo wear. They designed it. They hired, I of course had to get it approved, but they hired the person to do it. They then sorted them all out and delivered them to everybody. They put up the locker signs. They helped with all of the, publications that we had that are part of that poster, that banner that we have down at the end of the hall. And I really like that. They had some other ideas for youth apprenticeship cords, which we were able to award 18 of our seniors last Wednesday night, because the state considers year 2 of that program an AP level achievement. And that doesn't always get shared. And there are opportunities for some of those programs too to continue with scholarships. There's credits they're getting ahead of time. Hours they can count, like physical therapists, when they do these assistant hours, can count them when they're actually doing practicums down the road. There's certifications that we're helping them earn. So there's really like so many little turns, kind of like the trip they just went on to Paris. All these little hidden agendas or hidden spots that you wouldn't typically think are part of something can be. And that's one of the things that I truly like. For next year, this year I had 23 students. 18 of those graduate this year, and 4 would be left. One has decided that right now she thinks she's not going to go into year 2 of what she started. If she changed her mind, great, we can switch. That's the other part I like about this program. If you start during your junior year, you can switch senior year to a totally different pathway. And it's just another year 1 program. So there's flexibility for them to expose themselves to more things. I interviewed almost 40 students for the program and brought 38 of them to our committee. The other ones just weren't ready yet. And that's kind of where Wildcat Work Experience fits in. If they're not quite ready yet, and they need a little bit more time to grow with some of the employability skills or get some exposure to the direction they want to go, then we can help them with that. And so this year's a great example. I have 2 or 3 students that were doing that are now moving into youth apprenticeship for their senior year. And it's going to be a better experience for employers and for them because we were patient enough to wait and then guide them. So that's another aspect that I really think is important. One of the other things I want to do new this next year, we've had assignments that we do. They do weekly journals where they have to report hours and share information about either personal growth, goals, career visits, something about the company they're working for, so they're not just earning a paycheck. But this next year, I think that something more useful would be to take some of these career pathways they're in, since my numbers keep getting bigger and bigger, and have them create little like mini job fairs or presentations for our younger students. That was my goal this year, but then we have some major changes, as you know, how the program's going to be delivered, and I've been working with that committee to help make those changes happen. And so it would have been something I would have done in the second semester because they've had enough time to grow. But I think it's more imperative to do it next year because without the Dane County Consortium, this first year we're not going to be able to put together Future Quest, which is the 8th grade experience where they go for the career fair at the Alliant Energy Center. So some of those things are going to temporarily look a little different. And so I think we need to find ways in the school through our ACP program or through something like this to give kids more, not just hear about it, but get them out there. You have to get out there and see, just like going to Paris. You can look at pictures all you want, but until you're there feeling it, experiencing it, you don't know. So that's kind of one change I'm looking at. I've estimated 36 students in our grant for next year. That's a fluid number. And the reason it's fluid is that we also have program connections to the biotechnology program offered through BCTI. And they're currently in their interview process for the kids right now. We have 2 that are trying to get in that spot. We have 1 that already was accepted to the UW Health program, which is a pretty awesome opportunity because they rotate them through all of the health science areas. There were 208 applicants and they took 60. We had 1 that did that. We have some going to SSM Health again this year too. And I think you should know as well, one highlight, one of our senior girls, she started as a junior as a CNA and she went to St. Mary's Hospital for her senior year. And the president of the hospital tracked her down and walked up to her and asked her if she was this person and told her what awesome work she was doing. And her name keeps popping up as one of the star youth apprentices that they have at SSM. And of course she didn't know who he was, but we figured it out. And I just think, that's pretty cool when a president of a hospital finds you. And it's Belleville High School, a small school. We really do put high caliber kids out in our communities. You can trust them almost anywhere when you take them on trips. And I mean, they goof off here a little bit, but they're gold when they go out most of the time. And they work hard and they're smart. So, I really appreciate that. And I thought you should hear that little caveat. Okay, as for the final thing then, I did put in there about the gifts we're giving. We haven't done the breakfast since COVID. We may need to look at that next year again, some kind of an event, just because we don't know if we'll have a youth apprentice banquet like we had this last year. That's just going to depend on how the coordinators in the schools want to handle that. So I just do a small personal gift, a card. Youth apprentice employers are either get a chocolate box and a wind chime that says got a thank you on it. And I like that because I'm a chime person too. And I think, when you hear that ding-a-ling-ding, you think, oh, I helped a youth apprentice kid. That's just me. All right. And then some of the work experience parent or employers are getting a thank you pen, a card, and some chocolate as well from Andina's. So they're seeming to appreciate it and like it. they just like to know that you care about that they've done this. Okay, and lastly, as far as the consortium, I just want to share, because there has been a lot of talk with parents, and as I've been out in the community with employers, this kind of fear that potentially we weren't going to have a youth apprenticeship program anymore, and it was read in the board minutes back, when we had to vote to dissolve Dane County Schools. And so I just want to go on record that indeed we are still having a youth apprenticeship program. And the only thing that's going to look different is what I have to do behind the scenes to do paperwork. And that's it. Everything else is going to look just exactly the same. To a parent, to an employer, they're going to get the same level of service that they've always had. And I really feel like if people were to run into other people, that message needs to go out to our community. And, it was pretty nerve-wracking there for a little while because we didn't know what was happening. But I really, really like Seth Lenz. He's the CEO of Workforce Development Board of South Central. And we're working every week. We're having meetings with Becky Kickert, who is his development coordinator, and she's going to expand her duties to include youth apprenticeship. And she's awesome. So I have a very solid, strong, good feeling that everything's going to be perfect. So just want that to be out there. All right, I've invited one of our consistent employers. We have quite a few employers that have had more than one student. But I like the idea of Erin, who's in our health profession. She's also a 2001 Belleville High School graduate. And I had her in class too. And sadly, that's happening. I have a lot of employers that I had as teachers, or they had me as their teacher. And I have a lot of students that I now have their children, when I go to meetings. We were just at one Monday. Those meetings really last a long time when you have known each other. So Erin does human resources for New Glarus Home, and she hires a lot of our nursing assistants. So I wanted to have her share her experience with youth apprenticeship and why New Glarus Home continues to be a solid partner. They also host Quality CNA, who is our youth apprentice certification employer. So come on up, Erin.
Hi, guys. Like Miss Gartley said, I graduated from Belleville in 2001. So it's like a blast from the past to be back here. Brings back a lot of memories. So yeah, I work at New Glarus Home. I'm the HR director. And I have thoroughly enjoyed working with youth apprentices. They are a great group of people, and employees are great, but when you have the opportunity to work with students and watch them grow, it's a whole nother level. Historically, we have mostly CNAs working with us as youth apprentices, but we've also had a student work as like part of the administration of a nursing home to get that part of it, and also as a resident assistant. The caliber of students that come out of Belleville, I think, have definitely been, I would say, high level. High level meaning they have this like need to grow and learn above a lot of other students. They are very, very responsible and reliable. Because they have to get their CNA certificate before they can come work for us as a CNA, I think that there's a sense of pride in these students that they've already started, like they have a certificate, like they're already on their way to their next step in life, even as juniors. And they know that they're furthering their education and their career at the same time. The best part of the program that I find the most enjoyable is just watching the students grow. They walk into my office for that first day and they're so shy and timid and they don't really know what to say to you, and you're this big scary adult and they're trying to get a job, and by the end of the first year they're like a tulip about ready to blossom. And then I've seen them go through their second year and they're just like not afraid to speak up. Their communication with with me and everyone else they work with has grown. They're not afraid to speak up, and they're not only learning like how to be a CNA or how to work in a nursing home, but they're learning like real life experiences. They're learning how to be a good employee, um, time management skills. I mean, you name it. Like it's that that's my favorite part is just watching them grow from just a student to, you know, a young adult. And the ones that I've had the last 2 years have just blown my mind. And I know that they are going to go so far, and I can't wait to see what they do. So the Youth Apprentice program is amazing and a lot more than I thought initially that it was going to be when I was first introduced. So thank you for allowing that in your schools, and just keep allowing the students to leave school, um, and further their careers. It's a great experience. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I have a student in the program, my daughter. So, and she's actually the one who's not doing it next year because it was a learning experience for her career trajectory too. But can you just speak so everyone kind of knows like what are the requirements of a student who participates in the program? Because obviously there's the employment component, but there's also a classroom component
Correct.
here at the school, and also so they understand the amount of hours that are involved.
Correct. So, yeah, that's a good question. So, in order for a student to participate and earn that cord we talked about, they have to, even before we accept them in the program, have had some kind of past experience, either a class here at school, a personal interest, that somehow they've experienced this. They're not just taking a dart and throwing it at a board saying, I want to do this. Okay? It can just even be a hobby or a passion. Then they have to take, after they're accepted, they have to have their schedule managed, and there has to be a class that corresponds directly to their youth apprenticeship. And the study that this on the job learning guide is what it's called, that set of skills. We have students that take the classes here at school. That's always first choice. If we don't have it, they go outside of our school and take it through either a night class that was coordinated through the Dane County Consortium. There are classes we have coordinated through UW-Madison, through Madison College, through Destination Career Academy. Some are online, etc. There's certifications depending on if it's whatever career path they're in. Okay, all of those things count for credits for the student. So that's part of the requirement as well. They have to maintain a C or better minimum for the program. They have to maintain their grades during the time they're in apprenticeship. So if they end up on our pass list for 2 weeks in a row and have a F temporarily, and they can't get that up during the little couple days to court get it done, then they get suspended from their work for the amount of time employers know going in, schools first, and support that. So that's the class component and the certificate part of it. Then they have to work a minimum of 450 paid work hours during the school year. Typically, I've had a lot of success starting them in the summer, especially athletes, because they can spread that out over time. And many of our students get most of the hours, depending on the area. Like I just had a training agreement or an ending meeting this morning, and the gentleman had 2,300 work hours. So, I mean, it's possible. It really depends on, and this person is staying with this manufacturing company after high school and going on to METC with them. But he loved it. It's his path. So, and one of her students had a few thousand as well. Yeah. Because they just picked up hours on weekends and days. So, and you know what? That same student kept her grades up, did sports. These kids are busy. And so the hours, it's a minimum of that 450. So if you do take and spread it out over time, starting in the summer, and then they have the whole next school year, they technically have until the end of the next summer if they do it for 1 year only. If it's 2 years, then it's the summer, and we usually like to have it by May 30th. Usually it's 15 hours a week. Mrs. Way is awesome at creating schedules that work. It's always a conversation with the employer as well. I have a young man starting at a plumbing company, and his employer prefers that he would have release in the morning. So we factor, there's a lot of wheels that turn in this to get that requirement met. And then as far as parent, student, employer meetings, the state requires a signing meeting where we sign what's called a training agreement that gets filed with the state of Wisconsin, and they become a registered apprentice. That gives the employer protections to cover the fact that they might not be 18 yet, and because they're in a state protected or a state work program. That's what it gives them for it. After that meeting, to get them started, then I touch base informally in the fall months, and then we have a formal mid-year meeting with an evaluation and conversation, and then we have our check-in again, informal in between, and then we have our final face-to-face in May, and that's what I'm doing right now. So that's kind of the process. Did I cover all what you were talking about?
Yeah, I just thought it was helpful.
Yeah. It's definitely something that is extra and above when they choose to do this.
It's like 450 hours for class. Our average class is 111 instructors.
Yeah, they earn 2 credits per year for youth apprenticeship. And then if the concurrent courses they take makes it 3. So that's why we have to stick with them. And, it's a lot of one-on-one work, but it should be because we sell it as personalized instruction. So. Any other questions?
I would just like to say this is an absolutely fabulous program. I knew very little about it coming into here, and I'm probably going to set up some time with you to just chat about it a little bit more
I'd love
because
that.
this sounds absolutely fabulous. I love the extend the classroom concept because, yeah, I think you're right. We've seen it in all the district highlights already, like extending beyond just the classroom and what we're doing here, also at the high school level, and getting kids out and letting them experience what it's like to be in the workforce a little bit and get a sense of what you like and what you don't like.
And it also connects them to the next step.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be arms that reach out,
Yeah.
because we can't do it all. My mom always said that. I can only take you so far. Now you've got to go here and meet this next group to help you.
Yeah. So I feel like we're very fortunate to have you at the helm, like leading things through this transition of, what's going on at the state level and the group and whatnot, and making sure like you're just herding cats up there. And I really appreciate all the work that you're putting into it. I did have a couple questions for you. Just one of them is, who's responsible for the transportation to and from? Is that the student that has to find transportation to the work site, or does the district help with that at all?
So students typically do that, but if there is a need through the youth apprenticeship grant monies, because we get awarded X dollars per student, that money can be used for travel vouchers. So for example, in Madison, they buy a lot of bus passes or they have Uber or something. But so far, we've been fortunate that students have been able to get to and from. I do have some that don't have their license yet that are already hired, and their parents have committed until they're 16 to drive them to and from work. So,
Love that.
Any other? And there's same thing like with the tool allowance, or there are, as long as it's anything from the YA grant monies has to be used for somehow YA student needs or the coordination needs, something like that.
So that would help them buy supplies or like you meant tools or
Right.
something that they might need on the job site.
Right,
that
and
they
that's a
don't have.
school district decision, like how it gets broken up, because it has to remain equitable. If you have so many students, you wouldn't want to give X thousand to one and nothing to another if the need was there.
And then just out of curiosity, and maybe this is more for our administrative team, have we heard feedback from graduates that have gone through the program, or any feedback from them in particular about how it's helped them afterwards?
So I stay in contact with some of them. One young man, actually 10 years ago, he was in IT and he wanted to do computer science, and he recently moved back to the Madison area, and he's largely successful working for a company in Fitchburg. And I actually touch base with him to see if he could help me with a placement for a young person. So he is forever grateful that he had the opportunity. He worked for Envision Software in Madison, and he stayed with them all throughout college because they allowed him to work at a distance. Another young man, Logan Neeson, he didn't really want to drive all the way to DeForest to Ahern, which for engineering, but that's where the job was, and that was at least 6 years ago. He ended up going to Platteville. He graduates this year, and he's going to go back full time. He stayed with Ahern the entire time. So yeah, I mean, I run into graduates and or talk with them, and somehow, some way, they've used something that they've gotten going forward. They don't all stay in the pathway that they thought, and thankfully not. That's a win too. If you know, I wanted to be a nurse. I still love healthcare. I get to teach it. I love it, but I don't do real well with some of the jobs that go along with that, and I volunteered at St. Mary's and during high school, and those are the things I think that we need to remember. Yeah, I mean, if I sat down and looked at the student's name, I could tell you more. But off the top of my head, those are the two I've talked to recently.
I think Teresa mentioned it just now and earlier, and then Steve brought up one of the biggest benefits of the program is actually the student that finds out this isn't what they want to do, because they don't get deep into a post-secondary program, deeply financially invested, and don't switch because they have so much put into it already. So they do take care of other life skills, right, when they come from it. Yep. But when those students do find this isn't their calling, that's a huge win for that student. Now, we may not have found the calling, but at least we know one path that they're not going to go down. The change in that consortium now does give Teresa and Kyle a lot more access to funds and decision-making locally. So that's a big win. So a lot of those funds, I think I shared last time, the large percentage was going to the consortium. So you have a lot more control, which is going to be exciting. And I also know just from the banquet this year, you guys rallied and made a smaller yet very personal event over at Monona Grove.
We did.
So we really appreciate the fact that you took that and spun a little bit of magic out of the little yarn you had left.
Well, and the magic really is, and I appreciate you saying that, but part of why I can be more confident is the relationships I have over 11 years with all the Dane County coordinators. I mean, you get to really know each other. We all have the same vision for work. It doesn't matter if we're a school with 4,000 kids or one with 500. The vision's the same. And that always helps us just all help kids. We all call each other and help each other find placements. I mean, that kind of network on my end is invaluable. And that's why I'm grateful that we're going the direction we are. Versus to a totally different entity where I wouldn't have those ties. So, thank you. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
Teresa.
so much.
All right. Next up, we have the Director of Teaching and Learning report on grades 6 to 12 curriculum, state assessments, and the federal joint notification.
Fell over. No big deal. All right. So I had two kind of bigger things in my report this month for you. One, I'm excited to talk about the 612 ELA curriculum. It has been 3 years in the works for the 612 English language department. So it has been a struggle for the last couple of years to move through the process. So Kyle took the bull by the horns and brought in CISA 2 to help us move through this, and it was super positive. So from that process, I outlined in my report, the CISA 2 consultant came in on the first day and helped us work through our vision. So what is our vision in the 612 ELA department? And then we worked through the key shifts in the standards. So as the standards were revised, there were some key shifts that were big in Wisconsin, and I laid those out in my report. So we walked through those, and we took their classes that they currently teach, and they evaluated them against those key shifts and decided
like if we were hitting those key shifts, and if we weren't, why weren't we? Which led us to a gap analysis, which we worked on the second day. And then from that, we narrowed it down to two. Actually, we brought in about 4 or 5 different curriculums to look at on the third day, and they evaluated it against the same evaluation tool they used on day 1 to look at their own classes and their own curriculum, and narrowed it down to these 2 final choices. So we have the HMH into literature that currently Sarah Boutel is piloting for the last 4 weeks here of school. So she's actually going to teach a unit from it to see what it looks like and how it works with the online stuff and the books and the workbooks. And then we also chose McGraw-Hill's Study Sync. And so Amanda Nemec and Betsy Jenkins are just, they don't have time to pilot because of how what's left in their 4 weeks, but they are just digging really deep into it. We have access to the online portion, and they're just like looking at the materials, using pieces of it. And so from there, we will meet probably on the next PD day and kind of lay out our final choice so that we can bring that to you in June, so that we can hope we can adopt and roll out for next year. The 612 team is pretty excited. It's, like I said, been a long time coming. The curriculum's pretty outdated, and it'll be a nice, we're hoping will be a nice match to collaborative classrooms. We've seen amazing gains done at the elementary school, so this will be nice to have kind of a nice formal curriculum that matches 612 with a nice scope sequence attached to it. So that was one big thing. The other thing I wanted to share was our joint federal notifications are now released. And so every year the DPI looks at all of the different indicators, and it looks at where we stand. We get a rating based on all the different indicators, whether they're compliance or results driven. And then they determine whether or not we meet criteria or not. So last year we did in the IDEA, which is the special ed side, we did get marked for not meeting requirement under IDEA because we had too many special education students opt out of the state level tests. And so our corrective action plan was pretty simple. All we had to do was not opt out as many students. We really wanted to encourage families to give their students a chance taking those statewide assessments. And so this year we had a significant less amount of students. I noted that in our report this year that we, in terms of the forward, we only had, I think, we only had 3 students opt out of the pre-ACT, and 2 students take the DLM, and then we had 1 student take the DLM at the forward for the forward, and we only had about 4 opt-outs for the forward exam.
Tell them what the DLM is.
DLM is the dynamic learning maps. It's the alternative assessment that is standardized for students that work in the extended grade band standards. So it means they have a usually function in our cognitive disabilities program. So, so this year we should be cleared of. This year we were cleared of that indicator. So, according to the joint federal notifications, we meet all the requirements for IDEA and for disproportionality, which means we are not identifying students disproportionately according to race, social economic status, or any other. We're missing the word. We're not disproportionate. And then we do not have any ESSA identified schools or groups this year. So we meet all the requirements for the ESSA as well.
So Becca, my history with this is, and I've been listening to superintendents recently at the superintendent conference, and I'm hearing the chatter of, oh, we've been identified. This is actually a really big deal.
It's huge.
Like you may say, oh, okay, we're not identified, move on. This is really big deal.
Yeah. So if you're identified in any of those areas, you the first thing you have to do, the first year you usually get a year to like try to work on your own to get yourself off of the requirements. If you don't, then you have to go into a continuous improvement cycle that's guided by the Department of Public Instruction, and you have to submit a lot of data and a lot of meetings. So it's a big deal. It means we're doing what's best for kids, and that we're not we're not segregating is not the right word, but we're not disproportionately having students not take tests, not accessing our curriculum. Their IEPs are appropriate. We're having kids graduate on time and with their classes and meeting requirements. So when you take the 20 indicators, we only had 2 areas that we struggled in, and I gotta find it. Sorry, I should have been more prepared. We had 2 areas that we have zeros in, and that was in indicator 12 and indicator 13. But those, I think those were the ones.
I think the other reason why I say it's a big deal, and when you hear that we had that preliminary identification because of the opt-out testing, or numbers of families opting out, is many of the things that are identified are cultural. The data comes out, but it's typically because of culture within a district, which is why when a district finds themselves in being notified or being identified, they struggle to get out of that because it's so even something as simple as whether they opt out of testing or not. Well, family does that, right? So they make a decision based on a variety of factors. We don't make that a choice individually. And so that's where Becca, Kyle, Kelsey, and their teams working with students and their families to show the importance. That shift in doing it so quickly is really excellent work. So I'm really excited for the fact that even when we dipped into that, many districts that dip in there find it very hard to get back out.
And many of the indicators that they score on, you only get up to 2 points, right? So it's pretty quick to not be able to get all 2 points when they're scoring those, because it's only out of 100. So, and one of the ones that I think is most important to me is indicators 6 and 9, because indicators 6 and 9 are about where our students are placed, meaning how often they're removed from the regular education classroom in terms of special education. And we work really hard at making sure our students are in the regular education classroom as much as possible. And that provides optimal services. So we scored 2 in both indicators 6 and 9. So, any other questions for me?
Should have probably rehearsed this before we got here. Sorry.
I should have been.
No, me. My questions on my part. Yeah.
I know, but I should have been more prepared on
No, you're
my
fine.
information. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becca.
All right, next in our reports is the district administrator report on donations, recent district events, and upcoming committee meetings. I thought you were going to talk at the mic at the podium.
All right. Thanks to some of you for noticing a few things that were missed. So we have several donations. So the Roger Moen, and we talked at a past meeting about how the board honored his passing. We got a small donation there for the band activity account, and I talked to Steph Way, that's being used for more toward instruments again. We have a couple different donations that went to the FFA through the Deb Herfel Memorial. I believe one was a family member and then the Urbox. And that is being used for trips and activities on those trips. And fortunately, we also just had their sale last week to add to that as well. So Brother Love donated to the $600 to the middle high school special education department for their oven stove. The current oven stove is up there at the top. You can see that picture. So it's time for it to rest its weary soul and move on to a new one.
I think I had that in my home ec class when I was in. I think I had
so
a
Joel
stove just like that in my home
Joel
ec
is working
class.
on getting a new one. They think they've identified theirs. The Blackbaud Giving Fund is a fund where when people do purchases or donations, they can target it toward a particular group. In our elementary, in both Costco and that fund both went to the elementary faculty account. And that's used also for field trips, staff activities, and other expenses in the elementary that Kelsey and her team identify. And finally, the Treaders donated to the Awesome Scholarship, and Kylie's pictures down there where she was still here, but she was the award winner this year, so congratulations to her. District safety drills. So our elementary, this is a past picture. This wasn't from this week. We're doing some of our most significant drills last week for the elementary, this week for the secondary. I'm going to keep it very vague like that, but just want you to know that they are doing some of that important work as well, and they've been communicating with families. So and we're working through some issues here at the middle and high school due to our PA system. And so thanks to Kyle and Liz for navigating those waters. The Wisconsin Civics game, we got 6th place. I know when I asked Chad, he was really excited that they got to the finals. This is a couple of Fridays ago, and when I said, how did it go, I got this big, long list of things that they're going to try to do better for next year. It sounds just like him. The part about this that I enjoyed the most, I was at CISA 2 for the PAC meeting, and Jill Underley, who's in that second picture from the left at the bottom, she's the one standing talking in the very light blue blazer. She went from this to CISA when I was there and did a little shout out to Belleville because she was very excited that Belleville was there. I think, not every district in the state is doing this. So our 4 students that did this, and you can see their pictures, and really took it on and got to meet Josh Call and some others. So just a really neat experience for them. And they did get to that finals, which is really great. So we are also part of the Village of Belleville, who's in the midst of doing the Belleville Informed Development Project. So also Grace Methodist is also doing a visioning project. And later we're going to be talking about our strategic planning and visioning as well. So that's really exciting because a lot of groups in town are kind of feeding off one another and fortunately aligning our work. I am sitting on this group. So I am the district connection. They're working in 7 different asset areas. I'm working with the human capital assets. So I'll be bringing together a team of entrepreneurs, youth apprenticeship sites, and folks from our organization here to do our work on that, bring that back to the larger group, and then there's going to be some community meetings as well. This work is going to be taking place on a monthly basis. By the time we get to ours, this will probably just be finishing, which is going to be perfect time for that to be taking place. So pretty excited that that's happening. So if you hear more about the work that the Village of Belleville is doing, that's what that is. So we have several upcoming events, even added this right at the start of the meeting. So Blood Drive is coming up on Wednesday, as is the middle school spring concert, followed by, the high school one is a week off. That should be the 21st. I will fix that for later. Signing day follows a week after that. These are all on Wednesdays. Got the Jazz in the Park that same Wednesday. To break the trend, Wildcat Wall of Fame inductions on the Friday. That's the Friday after Memorial Day. And then last day of school is the 6th, which is then followed by graduation on Sunday at 1 p.m. So that's going, and there's other things going on, but these are some of the biggies. And then we have the upcoming committee meetings. So as you think about the committee's assignments for when we get to that part, the reorganization, you'll know that we're really trying to make sure that we are already scheduling that next one after the last one, just so we constantly know when the next one's coming up. So already have some of them scheduled. Actually, the last 4 scheduled already for after the start of the next school year when staff start coming back, including negotiations. And I just want to make a statement about that one. I talked with Meredith and Dave both, and that is being placed there because the CPI will be coming out about a week or 2 before that. So we'll be able to then we'll have a lot of information already. We'll have CPI, we'll have the state budget will be in place, lots of things, so that we're hoping that we can act as quickly as possible. So give people resolution on that. So that's it.
Thanks for that report. Up next, we have our CISA 2 report. Marianne.
Thank you. So we met on Tuesday, April 15th. We were in person, which is always wonderful. Dan commented on a couple different things that I have in my report. They've put together some charts to better help people understand what CISA 2 or what CISAs are. So I think that'll be helpful. I printed one off for tonight, but I don't think I brought it with. So, and then CISA 2 will also be the fiscal agent for the Dane County New Teacher Mentor Consortium. That's new starting in July. Jason reported that he's, with all the possible changes with Head Start. And so he's working with Marianne, the director, to calm some of their fears. So, and then Mitchell commented that he's working with several districts on video projects. And then the Board of Control, we discussed employment contracts for next year. And then during closed session, we worked on on Dan's evaluation. So we'll be wrapping that up next week during a closed session. Our next meeting is next Tuesday, and that's virtual. And then June 17th will be our delegate session. I'll be meeting in Whitewater. So, I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions? And I included, Jim included the attachment from the presentation, which was by Audrey Lessendeck. She's the Senior Director of Language and Culture. And I love hearing from staff about CISA 2's work here. So thank you.
All right, that is it for reports. Thanks to everybody for those wonderful reports this evening. Next up, we have discussion and possible action items, the first of which is the WIAA sports participation for physical education credit. And
motion first.
Yeah, and I'll entertain a motion for that one.
I'll make a motion to approve allowing WIAA sports to be used for physical education credit as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Beth, seconded by Alan, and we'll open that up for discussion.
So before Kyle, Soraya, and Riker start, so typically the May meeting, the student reps do not present, we do the top 10. So this is a bonus round. I don't know if this has ever happened, so I'm just very excited for the fact that they're trying to bring this and land the plane on this one. So I'll hand over the.
Yeah, and just real quick, I'm here to say I worked with them to put this presentation together, and you guys have the official stuff in front of you. But it is going to be their show here to kind of explain it and get the approval going. So I will first, I believe, Riker, you're starting first with the first slide, right?
All right. So this is just kind of recapping what we've talked about before, but this slide is going to go over our process to how we got to this point, to where we believe that this was something that the district wanted to move forward with student and staff. So we did some research of surrounding districts on implementing this practice. So we went to DPI to get some schools that had done this before, to see if they had, for the reasons that they had done it, for some schools for the reasons that they hadn't done it. So we got those points. We worked with current staff members to create a proposal that you guys have in front of you now. We worked with Ms. Way, we worked with Mr. Loshaw, Mr. Schmidt, we worked with Mr. Nelson, just to get all the ideas together to help bring this to you. And as well, we wanted to gain the approval, disapproval of our students and staff on this proposal. So we surveyed students and some staff with the Google form, and that pie chart there is, I believe, for students, we got 57 responses, and we got a 2/3 majority that were in approval of this. So, yep.
So the proposal, so it would just be juniors and seniors, just so we can make sure that people have had some experience in sports beforehand, and so it must apply prior to the sport season, and the waiver form would just be available in the main office for students to grab, and that would be something where they'd work with their coach and with Mrs. Way to just make sure it's the right fit for them and it would fit into their schedule. Yeah, so there's just options, and if things happen. If there was a case where a student got injured or something, that would be something where they'd work with Miss Way and their coach and just find a solution. And then so the replacement class, it would have to be a core class, like your math, your English classes. So it wouldn't just be a free period. And that would be something they'd go to the curriculum guide for. Are there any questions?
How will this be communicated with students until it becomes standard practice?
It will be part of our presentation to start the school year, and then as Ms. Way starts communicating, as we get closer to talking about scheduling for the next year, it'll be included in that throughout. I believe also Mr. Nelson is going to build it into his, when he brings all his parents in for his different parent meetings, he is going to mention it as well.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment to commend both of you. It takes a lot of work to do something like this and to go through all the processes that are involved. And I think you learned a lot over the year, and you have a pretty cool legacy to leave your fellow students. So well done for both of you.
So how does that feel to accomplish this?
And you don't even get to enjoy it, right?
So I was running back there, so I don't know if you talked about, because originally this was, we were talking about 10 through 12, and then it went to 11, 12. And could you talk about that conversation we had about why that shift was made?
So for the first reason that Sarai mentioned with sports in general, I mean, as a freshman and sophomore, you're still kind of building up a feel of that sport. I mean, I know so many people that have gone the first, even second year, and then they've quit a sport. So it's not really, it's kind of defeating the point if you go out your sophomore year and then you quit. Usually those people that are taking advantage of this have been committed athletes their freshman, sophomore, prior to that even of high school. So this would allow those people to take advantage of this. And at the same time, Sarai talked about core classes. As a freshman and a sophomore, you don't have a lot of flexibility in that. You really have strict standards that you have to meet. So it's only really once you become a junior and senior that you kind of have flexibility in those core areas. So that is why it would be more accessible and easy to implement for juniors and seniors.
I think there was one other issue we talked about in terms of physical activity over a course of a career.
Yeah,
rather than-
yeah.
Can you guys speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so we do want to make sure that students are still getting like some gym class in, because there are like important things that you learn in those sorts of classes. And so it's more of like a scheduling conflict thing, because just like upperclassmen tend to have more scheduling conflicts because they're like running out of time to get the courses they still need to get in.
So this is slated to begin in the 26-27 school year. Why did we opt to wait until 26-27 instead of implementing this fall?
Because we just about every student's schedule is already done for next year. So we're just going to wait and roll it out in full the following year.
That makes sense. And I think you'd mentioned, Riker, that there were other schools that opted not to adopt this type of thing. What were some of the reasons that other schools might have? Do you recall some of the reasons that other schools might have said, yeah, we're not going to go through with this policy?
I know some of the reasons is just that some of those schools, they didn't have enough students who maybe favored this, so they just felt that they would have gone through more of a hassle to even implement this, and it would have been used by so few people that it wouldn't have been valuable to go through all the work and process for that to become like a real thing.
So I brought maybe about a dozen different policies from districts for you guys to look at, and then I peppered them with maybe as many or more questions, kind of going through this just to really work on where they landed overall. So it was a pretty exciting conversation in Mr. Lorsaw's office. So I just want to know that I really appreciated the thought you guys put into this and really look. And again, we found that there's districts do this very differently, right? We found everything from sometimes you have to do 2 sports to earn your credit. Sometimes you can, what's that?
Sometimes you like bank it.
Yeah, bank it. All sorts of different options. So what was nice about this is these guys came with a philosophy, and then they just kept kind of honing and shaping it through those conversations. So really appreciate that time you gave us.
Wonderful. Any other questions or comments?
I guess I'm just going to share because I know I met with Jim about it, and I think that's part of the reason maybe he took some of the policies to you guys is that I generally prefer a more flexible approach to this waiver, which means, when you look at a senior who might have 2 periods already taken up by calc and wants to do a work apprenticeship, which is 450 hours, I don't have a whole lot of concern if they are using the activity they had in their freshman or sophomore year to count for the waiver. Because the waiver, the state law does not require it to be within the same school year. It can be earned and then applied later. I also think I struggle a little bit with the idea of core graduation requirement. Belleville has higher graduation requirements than the state level. In addition to what the state mandates, we mandate an additional credit load. So the challenge is you really don't maybe have what you would call a true elective that meets the requirements of the state law until you become a senior anyway, because this doesn't apply for electives in fields outside of English, social studies, math, science, or health education per the state law. That's not us, that's the state law. So I just struggle with what a core graduation requirement is and how we're going to say that someone is not necessarily meeting that, because they can't use it for work apprenticeship. They can't use it for some CTE stuff unless we've designated it as a math class. They can't use it for computer science or tech ed. So
They could use it for computer science. Absolutely. It counts as math credit.
if the computer
It could
science
be.
is designated as a math credit, yeah.
Yeah, which it is. So yeah, it would work for that.
Yeah, it just depends on the nature of the classes.
Yep. Yeah, and we went back and forth on that. But at the end of the day, the goal is for our kids not to get out of physical education. It's just to reward them for the work they put in throughout high school, but also understand that like it is very difficult. This is one that I'll be curious to see the percentages that we get in this first couple of years, because it is a very finite amount of students that it would fit to, but it will give the opportunity for those kids. But we also still want to encourage. I mean, we have the only people they missed to thank, and that was on me for reminding them, is the support we got from both Mr. Legal and Ms. Trado. Because at the end of the day, it potentially would affect their numbers. So still making sure that we keep them hitting our Phi-Ed requirements throughout, as well as still giving that flexibility for our students who truly want to excel and advance, and more so not just the goal not be to use it. Now, I would say it's written, and then you guys can see it also is up to administrator discretion at some point. So there could be flexibility down the road depending on what it's needed. So I'm curious to see our numbers this first year or two we roll it out, and to see where it leads us to. So I think that's a very fair question.
How many PE credits does the average student graduate with right now? Do they just go to the minimum? Or I imagine that most of our athletes are actually taking more PE classes, partially because they probably enjoy the physical activity. They enjoy having lifting in their schedule and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say rarely am I doing a senior grade check and they need to get one more 0.5 credit of Phi-Ed. But lately, actually, no, a little bit more. They have been drawing it out a little bit more, I would say, than I'm used to. But a good chunk of them, yes, have 2.5 credits of Phi-Ed. Correct.
Yeah, and that's part. I mean, I know that there are seniors next year who are taking Phi-Ed because they have to, obviously, more than a few that would qualify for this. I will say, is it possible to implement it for the current sophomores next year? Because otherwise, they only have 1 year of participation that could count, and that's a senior year. So if they decide they're going to bank on getting a waiver their senior year and they tear their ACL in the fall sports season, I guess we could put them in a PE class later in the year, because this says that if you miss 2 weeks, you're done.
So, but if you read a little bit more, I put it at discretion. What we're going to try and work on is how can we say that. So yes, if they're out for a sport and they have an unfortunate injury that's uncontrollable, a blown ACL, a blown something, as long as they stay active with the team in a way that is possible. Same thing as if they would get injured in Phi-Ed. Like, we still find alternatives for them in Phi-Ed class so that they can still earn the credit. That's especially Ms. Trado is fantastic with that, with kids who would come with a variety of injuries. So yeah, we are making sure to word it, and I kind of have a word in there so that it is known that as long as they stay active and don't just like, if they get injured but then they're like, all right, I'm done with the team because I don't care about it since I don't get to compete, then it's different than trying to find the best way to maybe manage the team or just be there to support. We would still be able to honor and validate it. But I hope none of our kids get hurt.
And I think just to summarize though, is it's tighter to give you discretion as opposed to making it looser and having it be maybe used in ways we don't want.
Yeah, correct.
Any other questions or comments or discussion? All right. Hearing none, the motion on the table is to approve allowing WIAA sports to be used for physical education credit as presented. All those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Congratulations,
We
guys.
give them-
Thank you.
We'd have to look back at history. I have no idea if a student representative had been truly a part of something like this. So it is fantastic. And I did also want to just take this moment. They are going to retire as school student representatives, and they're going to cry about it for a while. I couldn't do as much as I wanted to. Thank you guys, but just a small token of thank you to both of you for giving once a month, being here on Mondays to do a lot of work that was asked of you guys. I mean, it was a huge jump we took with our student reps this year from just, it used to be just kind of general updates on what's going on in the high school, and we'd kind of move on to next month, but we had more meetings. These two were in the principal's office for the first time in their lives, probably. So in a good way, though. So I just want to thank them both very much on behalf of everybody here in Belleville. So one more time, thank you for our student reps this year.
So it's interesting, when we were having our last meeting, Sarai did mention that the questions that you posed started them down this road. So thanks for that.
Thank you, guys. Your Monday nights will not be the same.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the out-of-state wrestling trip request, and I will entertain a motion there.
I'll make a motion to approve a trip for the Sugar River Raiders wrestling team to a camp at Iowa Central Community College from June 9th through the 12th, 2025.
Second.
Motion made by Ryan, seconded by Meg. We'll open that up for discussion.
So Pete is back, same time as last year. There was a edit we made in terms on the form. They're accepting payment through when you leave for camp. So maybe you can talk about that as well, Pete.
Yeah, last year when we, well, thank you for coming here, and I don't know how I can, it's weird, I'm going to follow up for my son on that one. Same camp that we went to last year, Fort Dodge, Iowa Central Community College. Last year we wanted to get the payments in a little bit earlier because they offer free team singlets if you get them in before a certain due date. And now we got mostly everybody coming back again this year besides those who are graduating. So there wasn't a real big push to get all the payment in as soon as we did last year. So we can actually pay all the way up until the day of the camp and just drop a check off with them. So yeah, a little bit different payment this year, but relatively the same amount of numbers coming in. Middle school numbers are a little bit lower this year because most of them are now considered at the high school level. But I think we have a total of 20 students going total. And what is exciting too is we have, with the girl wrestling still continuing to build, we now have 2 girls going this year, and they do have a girls division that they incorporate into the camp as well. So now that the WI mandates that the girls will wrestle their own season, so when they get to go to a camp, they have an opportunity just to wrestle with girls as well. So looking forward to the trip again. Same as last year too. What we built a pretty cool relationship with Peck Argyle Wrestling. I've known their head coach for a while, so they take a crew along well, and we combine our teams together when we get over there, and it's a great experience. Kids, it is wrestling, but it's more team bonding. It's the experience, and living in that world for 4 days of seeing some of the best technicians. They get NCAA champions from Division 1, 2, and 3, sometimes Olympic champions. And yeah, I think the more memories they get are just the bonding as a team, and as a coach, it's always fun to see them grow as individuals, and it doesn't hurt that you get to wrestle at the same time. So
How many middle school students are going?
5 set up right now.
5, okay.
Yep. And which will work out because Peck Argyle this year has 13 going. So they've got a big push in their youth right now. So, and they're bringing 4 high school, and we'll have 15 high school. So
Questions, comments, or discussion from the board?
Are all the students attending male?
no, we have 2. Well, we have 18 males, 2 females.
Okay, but all the chaperones are male.
Yes, and one of them is the father of the female coming along. So
That helps a lot.
Yep, it does. It does help a lot. Yep. James LaFrance, he's been helping with our youth program for the last 4 years now. He's got a daughter in New Glarus who's on the wrestling team. So, yep.
Any other questions from folks? All right, hearing none, the motion on the table is to approve a trip for the Sugar River Raider wrestling team to a camp at Iowa Central Community College from June 9th through 12th, 2025. All those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have the bus driver compensation increase, and I'll entertain a motion there.
I make a motion to approve the bus driver compensation beginning with the 2025-2026 school year as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by Meg, seconded by Beth. We'll open that up for discussion.
So the bus drivers don't have a union, but they did have a couple of representatives that worked with us actually right at the start of the school year. And then we met with them several times in the last month or so. And really going in line with the teacher and the support staff, that 5% increase. The only thing that is not increasing is the van driving, and that is to create as I mentioned in the notes, a intentional separation of about $1.50 because of the requirement for the licensing for the CDL. And then using what would have gone to that, using that to then pay for the reimbursement. So a lot of our drivers are getting near that 70 age and they have to do the relicensure more often. So it's taking those dollars and investing it towards that. So that separation created that opportunity for that to take place. So this is in line with what's happening in the rest of the district. This is a great crew. And especially sometime in those days in January and February, I count to 7 when I'm standing on my corner and I feel really good. They're great. They're great with what they do. Sometimes some of those routes, especially out on Exeter Crossing, I feel like are dangerous on a sunny day like today. So.
Any questions, comments, or discussion from the board?
How does this compare with pay in other districts?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Actually, that was what took us the longest, was to compare. And it's really difficult sometimes because we pay by the hour, some of them paid by the route. So then we'd have to go back to those districts and look at calibrating, so what does that mean? How long are your routes? And I can say that we are in the pack. There's some lower, there's some significantly higher. New Glarus is kind of our benchmark, and we're right near what they are at as well. And there's trade-offs and everything too. So you might be a little bit higher in routes, but lower in trips. So we feel like we are competitive. We're not number one, but we're definitely not at the bottom. So, but that was a very time-consuming process. And also we find it was interesting as well. Not a lot of districts, or many districts, have shifted to having that go to a third party. We're not nowhere near that right now. I think we were able to manage it really quite well. And so again, it's that trade-off of and then we saw lower wages there, but then the money goes to the vendor. We feel really good that it's going just to those, straight to those folks.
Jim, when was the last time that we had increased wages?
That's a really good
but
question.
I don't
Eric?
remember the year.
2 years ago? But there was also another jump in there somewhere else, wasn't there?
It had been quite some time.
Yeah.
I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that we talked about it.
Right, the routes had been much longer. Yeah, the trips went up.
Yep.
Yes. But the routes has been, if I'm not mistaken, even pre-pandemic. Right around 2019, I think it was at.
First year, so
It was right around. It was right around that 25 back then.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, the motion on the floor is to approve the bus driver compensation beginning with the 2025 to 26 school year as presented. All those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Next item on our agenda is the strategic plan facilitator selection process, criteria, and weighting approval. And I will entertain a motion for that one.
I make a motion to approve the criteria and relative weighting of those criteria to be used in evaluating facilitator proposals for the district's strategic plan process as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Meg, seconded by Ryan, and we'll open that up for discussion.
So in the spirit of two things going on here. One is trying to move this process along without making any sort of meeting violations. So everyone, the district leadership team and you all worked in isolation from one another. No one got to see the combined results till after everyone had done their scoring. So part of that, we made sure to do that process. The second thing is why go through these steps? Because eventually we're going to have a facilitator lead this process. It's so critical to have an external voice because there's always history and having someone externally keeps that process moving forward. and really to go slowly through this and have us identify criteria, have us try to figure out which criteria matter more, are small steps toward when they finally show up, no one goes, what are we doing again? Right? So the next step after this then will be, if we do accept these criteria and the weighting, we then send out the request for proposals. We have at least 4 different facilitators or vendors that can do this type of work. And then we will use these criteria to look at their proposals. And then if we want them to come in person, we can also do that. So we're not going to rush that, but we just want to make sure we keep chipping away so that when someone finally does show up, we know why they're here. And we really feel that collective buy-in. So to go back, first of all, was identifying criteria, typically 5 to 10, and actually 5 to 8 is probably ideal because when you have so many, they start to dilute. So it seemed like when we had, 10 votes for a couple, 8 votes for a couple more, or 8 votes had a couple, 10 votes for 2 different, 8 votes for 2 different ones, 7 votes for 2 different, then it kind of went to 6, 5, 4, 3, seemed like that 7 was a good breaking point. I just made that administrative decision, took those 6, pumped those out, and you can see actually relatively equal weighting between strategic planning background, facilitation style, listening skills, communication skills, fit with Belleville, and cost. It's their job to help us understand how those will, in their proposals, work. Some of that comes through reference checks. So we'll be doing those as well. Once they will ask for some references so we can go back and say, talk to us about how these different things played out in your district. So questions at all so again, this is just another small step in that. And if we're lucky, we'd have proposals to look at by next month. May take a little bit longer though. Might take us into July.
When you say reference checks, is that comparable to the size and style of the district? Because one of these facilitators might work great for Middleton because they're a different makeup and size.
So we will give our district characteristics.
Okay.
And hopefully they use that as a good hint to, we are a rural school of 935 students, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Further questions, comments, or discussion? All right, hearing none, the motion on the floor is to approve the criteria and relative weighting of those criteria to be used in evaluating facilitator proposals for the district's strategic plan process as presented. All those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. We're skipping 5E for now. That had been moved to below board reorganization. So we'll move on to district insurance renewals. And I will entertain a motion there.
I'll make a motion to approve the health, dental, and long-term disability, life, property, and vehicle insurances beginning July 1st, 2025 as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Beth, seconded by Ryan. We'll open that up for discussion.
Eric, did you want to?
So we did work with our representatives from USI to talk about our health insurance renewal. And we did do a lot of really good things in the district. Our claims were down this past year, which, yay, that's a good thing. People are less sick. Other things that we did is the mandatory preventative care visit for all of our employees. The insurance company did like that quite a bit. And so at first we did get a higher renewal rate. Then we met again and said, what can we do to bring that down? We went back to the company and they provided a couple different options. One was to go in on a clinic that would have been in New Glarus. And so it would take some of those claims off of ours, but they were only going to be open 1 day a week. I didn't think that the availability and then sharing it with 2 other schools was really reasonable. So we decided not to go that route. Without having that clinic, they actually gave us a better rate because they were kind of boiling that into it, right? The clinic fee into that renewal rate. So
Tricor, they didn't.
Tricar did not get back to me yet. So that is our property insurance as well as our car insurance. I don't know with all of the different storms and the consolidation of some of the insurance companies where that will come back with. We have all of the forms filled out to get a renewal, but that should be here this week sometime.
So we will actually have to amend the motion for the property and vehicle piece. to just take that off because we'll have to bring it back next month.
Okay. So I'll make an addended a motion to approve the health, dental, and long-term disability and life insurances beginning July 1st, 2025 as presented, not the property and vehicle insurances.
Correct.
I'll second.
Motion made by Katie, seconded by Ryan. Any other discussion? Any other information to share on, on any of that?
I'm here for questions.
Did you get any input from staff on the mandatory wellness checks or just using Dean as our health insurance in particular?
So we've had Dean for the last 8 years, I believe. So I haven't gotten any negative feedback or positive feedback on that. The preventative care this is the second year of it, so I think we've answered all the questions. People know that they can always come up and ask.
Okay.
It's going so well. I actually brought some feedback to USI because you go into a preventative care, it should be free of charge, but as soon as you say, "Hey, I have a little, sore on my ankle," then all of a sudden it becomes not a preventative care, it becomes a doctor's visit, and then they get charged. So I did provide that feedback to them.
I think in the past, we've only had one health insurance bid on our district. Is that the case again this year?
That is correct. We tried to use that as some leverage to say, hey, we want to go back to bid. So we didn't necessarily do that full bid process that we've done the past 2 years. We're still been trying to get out of our claims or just bring those down so that we be in a position next year to potentially do that. And we're still on the HMO, not the high deductible. We did look at other options. One of them allows us to go to the marketplace and allow our employees to kind of choose their own. There was a lot of change that would have had to happen with that. And instead of being one of the first schools to do that, we want to see how that goes with others. So we did the smarter, safer route of just continuing on with what we had.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion from the board?
Did we give Dean a framework for the bid, or were they able to present us with like an HSA approach where we would a high deductible plan approach where we would then put money into HSAs?
So we had that a couple of years ago, and we had to go back to an HMO because our renewal rates would have gone up over 25%. So we need to actually fill that bucket again of money to be able to go back to that. So as USI, we're going off of what they are advising us to do. But that's something in the future to look at, changing that structure.
Yeah, it's just my experience with that is that for some employees, it does not provide a significant benefit. But for employees that have very low utilization, they get to bank a ton of money in a health savings account for the future. Yep. And generally, the district is kind of a wash for how it feels to the district.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or discussion?
So the first vote is on the amendment?
Yes.
Right, and then?
Yep. So the motion on the floor is to approve the health, dental, and long-term disability and life insurances beginning July 1st, 2025 as presented. All those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. And then the original motion, we don't need to vote on because we just voted on the addended one. All right, we're good. Thank you.
Sure.
Next item on our agenda is the 2025-2026 open enrollment applications.
I make a motion to approve the 2025-2026 open enrollment applications as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ryan, seconded by Beth, and we'll open that up for discussion.
So the numbers that I mentioned what I shared with the board, we're down 5 incoming. We do know there was actually, and so we have 5 graduates. We also do have one family we know that will be doing alternate open enrollment on July 1. So we do know that's going to be bringing those numbers up a couple. There was just a logistical hiccup with the window. And and this is one of these things that you're approving people to come here. And at the same time, they may not come because they may also be applying somewhere else. And so then we send out notice of approval, and then they have that timeline I shared with you. It's there we go. They have to receive approval or denial by June 6th. We send it earlier, and then they have 15 days from that to notify if they're going to come. Likewise, the open and rolling out doesn't really mean they're going to go out, just like people coming in. Most of our outs are because it's a family that's moved in here and wants to maintain schooling with the district that they're in. So it's not and I know Kyle and Kelsey, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know that Pam reached out to both of you in terms of the open enrollment out. Most of it is, I think there's nothing, you didn't see any other red flags either. So yeah, this really gives them the opportunity, but not until we get to that third Friday count do we really know what actually is going to happen. So I think the moral of the story is it's interesting. You don't see any significant shifts, and yet it really how it lands in the end is we won't know until September. And there's still that window that again opens in July 1 as well for alternate open enrollment. Still to be determined. Right now, all you're doing is approving those folks for coming in, and they've been vetted by Pam, Christian, in our office.
So we have a pretty large number open enrolling out, and you mentioned it's because a lot of it is because of families moving into the area and then wanting to stay at their current district. Do we have a larger overall student body consensus for next year then?
You mean the overall
potentially?
population?
Yeah.
I asked for that even in September, and I'm sworn I'm not going to get it till it actually shows up on that third Friday. We're not seeing any significant shifts though at this point.
Okay.
So, but again, those things can change as well.
Right.
So we see all those houses popping up, but they're not
Right,
all,
exactly.
right.
It's kind of
We're not
what I'm
seeing
getting
it quite
at.
yet, and there's not an indication that there's a flood. However, our 4K projected enrollment's about 15 or so higher than what it is this year. So the 4K is up a little bit. Projected, of course.
Projected. Thank you.
We are all kind of anticipating, is that surge going to come? So
Mhm. All right.
feels like it could be coming, like the barometric pressure is changing, but
You're going to get a little class, a giant class, a little class, a giant class.
And it's a full moon tonight.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or discussion about the open enrollment? Hearing none, the motion on the floor is to approve the 2025 to 26 open enrollment applications as presented. All those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Up next is the 2025 to 2026 support staff letters of appointment, reasonable assurance approval. And I will entertain a motion there.
I make a motion to approve the letters of appointment for support staff for the 2025-2026 school year as presented.
I'll second. Too long with the awkward pause. All right, we can open that up for discussion.
so this is that process we do each year. And then once these are approved, the letters are then our office, Kelly, will get those letters out to those staff to sign. It's actually a very important step to take as well. Excuse me. Because if we don't, then you start to get into issues where people can claim unemployment. So when your approval is taking place, we then will kick that process and often get those letters back, hopefully before people depart in June.
questions, comments, or discussion from the board on that one? All right, hearing none, the motion on the floor is to approve the letters of appointment for support staff for the 2025 to 26 school year as presented. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed say no. The motion passes 7-0. All right, next on our agenda is board reorganization. Get ready, folks, it's a fun time. So we'll start out, before we do the motions, we'll start out with voting for the various officers.
Give everyone
Okay, so everyone should have a copy in front of you. I'm going to ad-lib this a little bit. Everyone should have a copy of current board members, offices, and committees. The way that that the board reorganization works is that I will lead us with, first everyone should have these little ballots, they're all color-coded. For president, we'll do president first, then vice president, treasurer, and then finally clerk is the voting order. But we'll do one at a time. I will call for nominations 3 times before we move to do your voting with your ballot. You will sign it and date it, and then either Jim or Kelly will come around and collect those and do a tally, and that is how we will elect our officers one at a time. So as we go around, I'll open it up for nominations for president first.
I'd like to nominate Katie Worley.
Nomination for Katie Worley, seconded by Marianne. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Last call. Any final nominations? All right, you can write the name of the candidate for president on your ballot, sign it, date it, and hand it off.
Trying to figure out who's doing the.
Do I read each one?
We have over Katie Worley, Katie Worley, Katie Worley, Katie Worley, Katie Worley, Katie Worley, and Katie Worley. 7 votes for Katie Worley. I didn't read who
6
voted for
votes.
those. Did I read seven of them?
Did you vote for yourself?
7.
Sorry. Okay.
This is actually one of those votes.
I never know.
This is actually one of those votes that you can do in secret. This is the only vote you can take in secret. So, however, though, you all did sign, but there are 7 votes for Katie.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you for your trust for another year. All right, that was vote for president. We'll move on to our vice president ballot, which is your yellow one. And I will open it up for nominations for vice president.
I'll nominate Beth Yours.
I'll second.
Nomination for Beth is made by Alan and seconded by Ryan and Meg as well. Any other nominations? Second call. Any further nominations? Last call. Any further nominations? You can go ahead and fill out your ballot, and Jim will come pick him up.
Okay, we have a vote for Beth Yours, Beth Yours, Beth Yours, Beth Yours, Beth Yours, Beth Yours, and Beth Yours. 7 votes for Beth.
Thank you. Congratulations, Beth. All right, same deal. We'll move on to treasurer, which is your orange ballot to fill out. And I will open up for nominations for treasurer.
I'd like to nominate Alan Charles.
All right. Nomination for Alan made by Beth, or made by Meg, seconded by Marion. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Final call. Any other nominations? All right, you can make your vote and hand that off when you're ready.
All right, we have vote for Alan Charles, Alan Charles, Alan Charles, Alan Charles, Alan Charles, Alan Charles, and Alan Charles. 7 votes for Alan.
All right. Congratulations. All right, final ballot is for clerk tonight, and I will open up for nominations for our board clerk.
I'll make a nomination for Marion Vinny.
I'll second.
Nomination for Marion from Beth, seconded by Ryan. Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Final call. Any further nominations? All right, you can go ahead and vote and hand those off.
All right, we have vote for Marion Vinny, Marion Vinny, Marion Vinny, Marion Vinny, Marion Vinny, Marion Vinny, Marion Vinny. 7 votes for Marion Vinny.
Congratulations, Marion. All right, we have our new board officers appointed for the next year. Thank you, everybody, for your votes and your participation. The next thing we will do are, I'll entertain a motion for our delegates. So I will make a motion to appoint Marion Vinny as our CISA 2 delegate for the Belleville Board of Education.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Katie, seconded by Alan. Any other questions, comments, or discussion on that one? Hearing none, the motion on the floor is to appoint Marion Vinny as the CISA 2 delegate for the Belleville Board of Education. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, Marion.
Thank you.
Next motion I'll make is to appoint Meg Anthony as our WASB delegate for the Belleville Board of Education.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Katie, seconded by Alan. Any other questions, comments, discussion, or suggestions? All right, hearing none, the motion on the floor is to appoint Meg Anthony as the WASB delegate for the Belleville Board of Education. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, Meg.
Looking forward to that January debrief.
All right, so the rest of board reorganization is a little less formal. There's no official motions or anything like that. But what I'll do is I'll walk us through each of the different committees that we have listed here just to see if anybody wants any changes. So we'll just sort of walk through one at a time. If you would prefer to step down from a committee, just let us know as we go through it. If you'd really love to jump into a committee, just raise your hand, shout it out. It's just an open discussion on whether we want to stay where we're at or if folks want to move around at all. So the first committee we'll talk through is the Professional Educators Compensation and Negotiations Committee. Does anybody feel strongly about joining or leaving that committee?
I'd like to stay.
I am indifferent.
Okay. Beth is indifferent.
I'm happy to stay, but I'm happy to give it up if somebody else wants to jump in.
Any new takers? All right, still yours, Beth.
Okay.
All right. So we'll keep the same folks on that committee, and I'll remain as the alternate unless somebody else wants to jump in as an alternate.
Katie?
Yes.
If we have a question about adding a committee, does it make sense to do that now if that changes anybody's opinion on other subcommittee assignments? To have that discussion now? Or wait until after?
Let's do that at the end.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
I guess the other question I should ask as we go through is, do we need to dissolve this committee? Because that's also something we can do. We can discuss adding committees or removing committees if we feel it's necessary. So for folks on the committee, as we're going through, if you have had discussions about whether it's worth continuing the committee or have some discussion around that, open it up. We can open that up for discussion as well. Compensation and negotiations we're keeping, and it's going to be the same, it sounds like. How about our facility planning committee, which is Meg, Ryan, and Steve?
I really enjoy that one, so I'd like to stay on it.
Okay.
I would like to join this one if there's still space.
Okay.
I will shake things up.
Is anyone itching to get off of facility planning?
I'm willing to. I've been on it a long time, so you can have it.
Ooh.
I did such a good job.
You sold it. You sold it well.
Perfect. All right. So it sounds like facility planning will be Meg, Beth, and Steve, and Ryan will step down from that one. Thank you. Any other discussion about that committee that we need to talk through? All right. How about our policy committee meeting? Meg, Katie, and Marion are currently on that committee.
I also really love that one. If I could stay on, that would be so great.
Stay on as well.
Ryan, you want in? I know. I also really enjoy policy committee, so I think we're good.
There's a lot there. Ellen, you got these people like
All right, so policy committee will stay the same with Meg, Katie, and Marion. All right, how about the communications committee, which is Marion, Ryan, and Steve? Any big shakeup going on there?
I'd like to stay.
I don't want to.
Ryan, you can't give up all of your committee.
I cannot be on 4 committee.
You have to stay on something. All right. All right, sounds like communications will stay the same with Marion, Ryan, and Steve. Going once, going twice. Sold. All right, no changes to communications. Wellness committee is Katie, Alan, and Meg. Anyone itching to get off that one or join that committee? Thoughts or preferences? Sounds like no one's chomping at the bit here, so. All right. Wellness, it looks like will remain the same. Katie, Alan, and Meg. Thank you. How about Wall of Fame? Beth, Marion, and Ryan. So you're not going anywhere. All right.
You have to be on something.
Nope.
All right.
I'd like to.
Beth, you liking the Wall of Fame?
Yeah, I can say.
Okay. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to.
I can.
Okay. All right. Sounds like Wall of Fame is going to be the same also with Beth, Marion, and Ryan. So to recap, compensation negotiations will remain Beth, Marion, and Alan with Katie as an alternate. Facility planning will be Meg, Beth, and Steve, with Beth being a new addition and Ryan stepping down. Policy will remain Meg, Katie, and Marion. Communications will remain Marion, Ryan, and Steve. Wellness will remain Katie, Alan, and Meg. And the Wall of Fame will remain Beth, Marion, and Ryan. And now we can definitely open it up for discussion on subcommittees, alternate committees, additional committees. Talk to us, Alan. What's going on?
I think we should consider making the safety committee a committee of the board. Not necessarily to change the structure as it is or do anything, but just to ensure that there's board representation and participation. And I think a committee that's probably more important than some of the others on here.
Discussion, thoughts, comments? It's currently an administrative committee, correct?
Yeah, it's currently administrative, and it works with, and had worked with a lot of our first responders. The plan, especially after Mount Horeb, that conversation is to shift toward more tabletop exercises and then have the issues come up rather than start with the issues and then go the other direction. Typically tends to be, we tend to respect their schedules, tends to be during the day, but we could work with the first responders. I mean, I think there's gonna be less, people on the committee than before. So yeah, I mean, we just have to figure out what that would look like differently. I said, we either do a committee of the board where you commit 3 people to that, or it stays administrative, and then we would just find different opportunities for the board to be invited to come see the work. I did mention to Katie, I said, this may sound like a thing that's way over here. One of the things that, especially last year, lots of little things coming up, is I would like to start shifting to a weekly communication to the board on Fridays, a Friday letter. And so if you do not make a committee and this committee meets administratively, the product of that would be one of those things that would be included in that communication. So you would get that information that way. I know sometimes though it feels different to be right there to hear the conversation. Just like when you talked about the Wildcat Wall of Fame, you're like, I don't want to let go because you feel that connection to that type of work. So there's always those trade-offs, right?
I think given what we're confronted with from time to time and also our duties, it makes sense to have the board a part of running through sample scenarios and responses and allowing us to be more involved and educated in those.
We do have a unique situation where, and Katie and I talked about this too, where we have 3 people involved in the first responder world on this board. And I think one thing to think about is that we talked about was what happens when that may or may not be the case. And does that change the thinking for the board?
Yeah, I think for me, I'd love to see some board representation at those meetings, whatever that looks like. Whether we essentially, my understanding is if it became a school board committee, we are dedicating 3 school board members to attending those meetings as often, as frequently as they happen.
Right.
And in this case, we have three folks with background in first responding background. I don't know that will always be the case. In which case, would it make sense to still be a school board committee versus an administrative committee, which would include, of course, the principals and the administration team and first responders in the community? I guess I'm not sure who's all included there, but I would love to see board representation at those meetings as much as possible for folks that are interested.
Well, there's always future opportunities. I mean, so this originally came up from the Mount Horeb presentation when they had brought up that their wellness included safety. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Why don't we have that? And so, for future representation, if it makes sense, they could always merge it. Obviously you can always make these changes in the future.
Yeah, we just had that conversation in wellness about looking at those 3 different pillars within wellness.
Yeah.
So that's already a lot of work.
I'm not
This is
suggesting
true,
we
yeah.
do that now. I think it's best to have them separate.
Yeah, I kind of came to the same conclusion with Alan after the presentation we heard from Mount Horeb of this is important enough to feel like it needs to be its own thing. And I think about the community at large asking questions and what are we doing here and what's our policy here? And of course, they're going to come to school administrators, but they may come to the school board as well. And it looks kind of silly if we're like, well, I don't know what's going on. I don't know that brings a good facade. So I agree with you, Alan. I think, and if we choose to dissolve it or we choose to merge it back into wellness later in future years, we can do that now. But I think it also shows a perception to the community if we have an official committee on safety that we are focused on that as a district too. Even though I know there is a separate group that does that, it is not as visible if it's not a formal committee.
With this safety committee, one of my one of my questions and I guess concerns too is would the safety committee, is it now currently open to the public, or those are closed?
Those are
So
closed,
closed meetings, which
just like
they
we-
kind of need to be because it's security, safety and security of the school. You can't just have everybody showing up. So that would be, if it were a school board committee, they would all be closed session.
Start and open, but
Start and open
flip
and then
over to
go into
closed, yeah.
close right away for almost all of
That's
those.
pretty similar to what we do for compensation and negotiations. Those are
Mhm.
almost always immediately going to closed session.
We get really good at that exemption. 1985.
Yeah.
Would we ever, like in this potential committee, would we ever come across like information, like student information or scenario things that would then like prevent us from then dealing with them objectively if they came to the board later? Just I wonder, that's all.
Kelsey, Kyle, I see you both kind of perked up back there. What
Yep,
what are your thoughts? What are you thinking, administrative team?
I think we'd love to partner with the board in some areas. I also think trying to take where we currently are with what we do in safety and tied in with what the board is, I think, wanting to partner with is two very different things. I think it'd be awesome if we had like a bigger conversation first about maybe what that could look like, because like there's a lot of pieces that we do in safety and that we're working on right now that aren't really directly attached to anything that a board would have decisions for or tied to in our day-to-day operations. And so I wouldn't want it to cross over in that area. But I do think bigger picture, yeah, I think maybe a monthly possible conversation, but we already have enough committees after school that need to meet as well. So I am like trying to think about that aspect of it too, and the balance of how much we do that are specific to my building or Kelsey's building alone instead of the board and the bigger picture that they're supposed to be working on in terms of like policy and commitments and that kind of thing. So I think I'd be up for a little bit more of a conversation prior to this. I'd let Kelsey talk too.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think there are a lot of things running through my mind right now, especially being in my superintendent's courses right now. And we just did all of my things on like roles of the board and roles of like district administrator and administrators, right? And you're making policy to enact versus the day-to-day operations. And so I think we should probably have a conversation with the administrative team around what are you hoping the safety committee accomplishes, and then what do we do in day-to-day operations. So like big picture down to what we're actually doing in the day-to-day. I think some of the situations that came up this year, whoever brought that up, we debriefed in safety. We talked about very specific things with our first responders and used that as debriefing opportunities that I think lines could get a little bit hairy there too. So I think we also have all as an admin team reflected a little bit on what safety has looked like for the past couple of years and what we really want it to shift to and look like. So I think if we had board vision for that, admin vision for that, create a new safety committee, and then give regular updates to the board where you're a little bit more aware of what's happening at those meetings, that would bring a little more clarity, but then also got your vision for it. I think that could be a nice bridge. And then I think maybe we could revisit it a year from now and say, did this make the progress that we were hoping that it would make? And if not, then now let's take it to a board committee. But I do think we need those lines of policy versus day-to-day operations.
I think Meg also, though, your question about could we be talking about something that eventually comes to the board is probably the biggest issue or most complicating issue if you were to have a board committee.
Yeah.
I think you want to know what's going on in safety, right? And I think we want to shift what's happening and what that looks like. For a couple of years, it was honestly going through our safety plan, like page by page. Does this still make sense? Does this still make sense? And that's not a good use of anybody's time. We need it to be more tabletop activities. We need real situations. We know we need shifts in terms of more active practice and involvement in those meetings. So I think we're on the path to making it more functional, but I would love to have an administrative sit down with the board and set some goals in terms of what we want to accomplish with that. I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah. And especially as we roll into a new, we're gonna have a new protocol, new systems next year. We are all really working on defining what our own roles are on a day-to-day basis in terms of like what an emergency in the building is going to look like and what our responsibilities are. And like the board wouldn't tie into that at the start. Now it is going to be about how we communicate and educate you guys moving forward. I mean, because I know right now we always talk about how we are going to communicate. If there's something going on in the building during the day, how much do we communicate with you guys? What are we sharing? What are we not? And those would all be really good questions, I think, to know how to keep you updated on those portions.
And some of it, I think, is maybe keeping the board as a whole updated. But I think, to Alan's point, one of the things that I get curious, and Jim knows because I call him all the time and talk to him about, like, hey, I thought about this for an hour, and now I have more questions about this, and this, because I have like a passion or a background or an interest in this area, and a couple of us have sort of some background knowledge in this area that makes us think of things a little differently. And so just kind of applying, like being able to ask those questions and kind of getting like, hey, did we think about it from this angle? And I think is sort of, for me, like that would be a goal of mine, is to make sure that those considerations are taken into effect when we're talking about what kind of policies or what kind of new things we're doing around here.
We had a board representation on all. But I think if we're going to continue to meet monthly for safety, does that still make sense? And then if we're only meeting quarterly like the other committees, is that enough? So it's like some sort of balance struck there too.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking that and I could work with Kyle and Kelsey to draft what that model could look like. Could run it past you. Just by the way, won re-election to meeting with me on every Monday again, so we could reconnect about that, and maybe by the next board meeting we could bring a draft to the board or as a report just to get some feedback.
I think
we are, yeah. Well, either way, we don't have it right now. We don't have a deliberate mechanism to, and I think if we can do some drafting, I can do that reach out, and we could, on our sessions, kind of hone that and bring something to the board in a month, and we can get some feedback. And then if we need to reshape it even further after that, we can for July. But that would push us a little bit to kind of land the plane on what next year would look like. And then, like you said, if it doesn't land well, then in a year, then we are a little bit smarter when we get to this spot again.
I think another goal when I look at our current, so we've got 6 committees here. I see one of the other goals I thought of too is I see safety intersecting with facility planning, policy, communications, and wellness. Those are all facets of a committee that have safety in them in some regard. So maybe a goal for between now and next year is we look at in one of those quarterly committee meetings, where does safety and policy intersect? Where does safety and communications intersect? I think that's probably the heart of what you were getting at initially, Alan, is like this should be a topic that we're being informed of within certain parameters. Yeah. I don't know that it fits compensation and Wall of Fame necessarily, but the other 4 definitely all have a safety component.
You're right.
We don't want our plaques to fall off the Wall of Fame. I'm trying here. But I think safety for right now has just been embedded within wellness, though I'm not on that committee. So maybe the 3 of you, I don't know if you've talked about that at all, but it is going to be a big part of facility planning. We saw that with our referendum. It's a big part of communication. We saw that with issues this year at school and policy as well.
It was a big one on policy just this last week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for safety committee, we're not going to create a brand new one or anything like that at this time, but we'll kind of monitor, and I'll work with Jim on figuring out how we can get those communications out to the board about what was discussed and what feels relevant to share and how
Create a
frequently.
framework, and we can run that by you guys next month.
So I'll only mention, as I was looking through these committees, I was trying to think what ones do I not see that I've seen other boards have. And the 2 that stand out is we don't have a finance committee and we don't have a curriculum committee. And granted, curriculum has the risk of getting way too far in the weeds too. But at the same time, it can be helpful. It's also a place to direct some potential things from the public that rise to board attention, but maybe would not be helpful to be addressed at a board meeting initially.
So Eric and I talked about, especially when we talked about the that prepayment of debt question we're looking at possibly entertaining in the fall, and having that come through the facility committee because of the finances. And I don't know if that's just, it needs to be explicit. But right, we were thinking some of that finance work actually gets driven out of that. Yeah.
A lot of doing that committee is very finance driven.
I think on the finance end too, at least from a new board perspective, I feel like the updates that we get are pretty complete and frequent. So to me, I don't, we would hear more frequently and get updates from Eric more frequently than we would from subcommittee meeting.
Probably. I mean, the other challenge there, I think, though, is that the consent agenda walks through our finance stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of opportunities for discussion. And if someone were at a board meeting to say, I'd really like to drill down into that thing, I think we would all be like, we're in a foreign space. What's going on? There's just an opportunity for more board members to have a greater view of the financial situation of the district, both from operations and capital. I think the challenge is that you're talking about capital when it comes to,
Yeah, I mean,
but
there's
that
a
has
lot-
really big impacts for operations.
So a lot of what has happened in the past is that the finances have been put into the consent agenda, and then many questions have come into Nate or to Jim in the past, and then we answer them before the meeting. So we just spend a lot of time here doing that. We get the updates, and then we also will be able to address anything that was a concern.
I think for us that can be good. I think the challenge is if the public has a desire to see more. It's a bullet that we vote through pretty consistently. Not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And if it's quarterly, you're right. It's not nearly as consistent as what we're hearing here, but it's just an opportunity to do a status check of we're 6 months out from needing potentially an operating referendum, or we're looking at deficit spending in the future fiscal year. That coming up at a full board meeting would probably be a pretty loaded conversation and would probably be very telling about how little some of us know about what that projection actually looks like until it comes up here. That's just my only feedback on it.
Does this become a bigger issue? New board member as well here. I can still claim that for a few more months. And I haven't been on facility planning yet, so I'm going to learn a lot from Ryan, who is not here at the moment. Anyway, when we get to, or if we get to a capital referendum, does that go through facility planning?
Yes.
I think then, to Steve's point, and maybe we're not here yet, but in a few years, I think it might actually do us well to separate out and make a finance committee to say we're going to keep the doors open and the building running while we have a separate committee doing facility planning, so that we have a little more insight into both wings of finances, and so the public have an opportunity to see both wings. I don't know that we're there quite yet, but I think that's going to be a bigger deal in a year or two.
Yeah, just to be clear, I was not suggesting we add the committee right now. Those were just the two committees. That when I went through this list, I was like, we might need that at a time. There might be a pressing need for it.
I think facilities is going to become more important in a year.
But Eric and I have talked about the finance one quite a bit. Just haven't quite got the resolution out.
Yeah, I think to your point, that makes sense at some point. For the public input portion, I mean, are we going to continue with the task force? So like with the debt prepayment bit, are we still looking at creating another task force and getting the community involved in education and making decisions?
We'll bring a proposal to you probably in June for you to consider. That would a process that would be either in late August or September.
Yeah. So at least in the interim, we'll have public input on those topics.
Thank you, Eric.
I thought you were calling him back. All right. Any other questions or discussion regarding our committees? Good stuff. All right. Then hearing none, we've finished up that agenda item. We're going to go back up to 5E now that we have elected our officers, so that we can look at our state budget letter approval. And I will entertain the first motion in this one.
I make a motion to approve the state budget advocacy letter to State Senator Howard Markline, Representative Jenna Jacobson, and the Joint Committee on Finance as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Alan, seconded by Steve. Opening that up for discussion.
So, as we promised at the last meeting, Eric and I drafted some initial letters. Then I worked with Katie to kind of work on a version that felt like it was most in the voice of Belleville. We then took that version, honed it down, and then sent it out to all of you independently for feedback to come back to me. Got a couple responses saying looks great. No offers for edits. So, again, we didn't have any sort of conversation, just that. So this is our first time to actually, you all can actually discuss it together, that version of the letter. And I did, the Joint Finance did their first votes on, was it Friday last week? Thursday or Friday? I reached out to Dee Paddock from School Administrators Alliance, and as you saw in my notes, we originally said let's get it to Joint Finance because they had that link that we talked about last month. She encouraged us to send it the way we're talking now to our 2 representatives plus Joint Committee on Finance. Of course, our representative, Senator Mark Line, is both. And then to consider other avenues to share it as well, which would be through our newspaper, and things like that as well. So right now where I think we're at is, at least on the first motion, is the letter as is, and then we could talk after that if we want to have that sent to others. It's always, we want to make sure that if a letter shows up in the Post Messenger Recorder that you actually voted to have it show up there. So.
Is this also something that we could make available if any individuals in the district want to also reach out to their elected officials for them to sort of copy and paste and send?
Yeah, that would probably be the second motion, is who you wanted to make sure that we had eyes on the letters as a sample. I know that some districts have put them on their website, some samples for the community to do as well. So,
Do we know of, I know, was it January, February when we were in Mount Horeb and they talked about advocating for the same sort of thing we're doing here. Do you know if there's any other formal letters or communication going to the state that we are a member of?
This letter, we didn't get this from School Administrators Alliance or from the Greater Dane County Consortium. We actually had a couple different versions. We took School Administrator Alliance, actually did a little chat GPT with it, tossed that to the side, looked at Superior School District. They had a nice advocacy letter. That's the one we ran with that version and did some tweaking. So it was a little bit more of a free for all, if you will. I did the same thought. I'm like, okay, some of these organizations must have nice starter letters, but it seems like everyone kind of scrambled a little bit.
I think it would be nice to see something like this in the local paper. Just thinking of the panel discussion that Marion and you and I went to this past week, and the importance of the general public just kind of knowing more about what schools across the state are up against, and this being like a reminder then through something like the local paper or wherever else people think it would get attention. Yeah, just to keep it in top of people's minds that it's not just a Belleville problem. It's,
right.
Across the state, schools are facing these challenges.
All right. Any other discussion on the first motion to get this fired off to our folks? All right. Hearing none, the motion on the table is to approve the state budget advocacy letter to Senator Howard Markline, Representative Jenna Jacobson, and the Joint Committee on Finance as presented. All those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0.
So the second issue before we even make a motion is where else you would like a version of the letter to go to, right? And then you could probably do your motion, right? Because we have a optional motion there, insert, right?
Yeah. So we'd have to know which organizations. It sounds like we do want to potentially share this beyond just what we approved. Where else would we want to share this potentially? The district website is one. I think I heard the newspaper.
I think putting it on our social media would be helpful to show advocacy, and if anything, show an education on what money we need.
When you said newspaper, is it just Post Messenger Recorder? We also have the Monroe Times that we work with as well.
Both, sure.
Okay.
Do you know if other superintendents are doing this as well?
Or school boards or
Yes.
superintendents? Yes, they
School
are. Like, for example, I think New Glarus, I think, had done one.
Okay.
I know they did one on their referendum, but I think they did another one as well. And I asked and I said, did your board vote on it? Yes, they did. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, there are other boards that are.
Because to Steve's point, I think there's some strength in numbers if we send it to the State Journal and New Glarus sends
Yeah.
it to the State Journal in Verona
Yeah.
and Oregon, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, all these people are.
Can I ask a little bit, like, is it when we send it there, do we send it to the Post Messenger Recorder saying, this is the letter we sent to these folks? Or is it a different version that says,
It's a letter to the editor.
what's that?
It would be a letter to the editor.
But you're asking if we would use the exact language in this
Yeah,
letter,
so
or if it would need to be tweaked for a different.
They are not senators or members.
Right, we are reaching out to you to ask for
One
your.
paragraph preface would probably go a little bit.
Are you okay if Katie, if you vote for Katie to do that preface with me? So that we don't all have to come back and re-vote on it? We could vote on sharing that with the preface that Katie develops.
Is this something we would share with parents? I mean, a lot of them will probably read the newspaper. A lot of them will probably be on social media, but we as a board do not send really anything to parents, despite the fact that we make a lot of decisions on how their children's education works.
Ken?
We also don't
Might
have
send
to.
some real negative feedback
Yeah.
from it too.
Yeah.
So,
That's fair.
I mean, we could just post it on the Belleville information page for
Yeah.
that, I guess.
Maybe not. That's fair.
Could we send it to, I think this came up during the referendum task force. Someone had explicitly, I remember someone explicitly mentioning like we should be doing more advocacy. Maybe it's something we send out to that group specifically. Would that make sense?
Task force.
Yeah.
I kind of like that better than.
Yeah. Like a targeted
Mhm.
involved group.
So I have district website, Post Messenger Recorder, Monroe Times, Wisconsin State Journal, our social media, and to the task force
That's what I have as well.
with a preface with the stamp of approval from Katie on your behalf.
Okay, I can craft that into some sort of motion, right?
Luck.
Before I do, any other places we want to potentially?
Because she's asking if we need to have a motion because it's going to be sent out on behalf of the board.
Yeah.
So the board has to act on that communication.
Okay, I'll make a motion to share the state budget advocacy letter with the school district website, on the school district social media, the Post Messenger Recorder, Monroe Times, Wisconsin State Journal, and the Referendum Task Force, with a preface to be created by myself and Jim.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Katie, seconded by Beth. Sound legit?
Mm-hmm.
Further discussion, questions, or comments? All right, hearing none, we'll take that up for a vote. All those in favor say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Sorry, I'm just like making notes so that I don't forget what I said. Okay, thank you, everybody. Sounds great. All right, that wraps up our discussion and action items tonight. Let's move on to our discussion items. First of which is the Neola 34.1 legal updates. Policy 5505, policy 5411, first readings.
Yeah, so we have Neola. We just came off of Neola 33.2. This is Neola 34.1. A variety of legal updates, and then we also did work on some language around artificial intelligence, made very general language rather than something that was technology specific. And then we did have to do a special focus on Act 20. Every district is required to have a policy adopted by July 1st. They do not have to begin the policy, which we do not as well with this one, but you do have to have one adopted by then. So fortunately, by approving or doing the first reading tonight and the approval in June, we'll be on that timeline.
Any discussion, questions, or comments about?
I just want to thank Jim for going through all of these and making it so easy to see the changes and just really simplifying the process. Thank you.
Welcome. Took us a little bit, but we found our groove.
You sure did.
I have a question on 3281. There's a comment in here. It says that we added language based on November election in MMSD. I don't know what that means. Like the policy makes sense. I just don't get the context you put.
Yeah,
in
it was
MMSD.
just that they had an issue in their district during that election time, so that kind of made them realize that that was their inspiration.
Okay.
For Neola to start taking action.
So MMSD changed their policy.
Well, I think there was
based on an
something
event.
happened there, and then it motivated.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Look at you reading line by line through all this stuff. Okay. I think we all love it. I don't know why. All right. So we'll let that simmer until that was just a first reading, so you can read through that and see what's going on with that next time. Next up is boardsmanship, our annual board development tool, and budgeting, which is very timely because we were sort of talking about a little bit of this earlier.
So we got to this point last month, and we had at least taken the data. Now, so now it's an opportunity for you. And I always have those general questions about. I put the 5 questions down for the board that were asked because they always get cut off on the chart, and then it's really actually I didn't put them in there this time. It's typically like, what are you seeing and what is it?
The questions are below.
Yeah, they're right below.
No, those are the questions, but the processing, the questions to process, it's typically what are you seeing in the data? What does it mean, and what sort of action? But you've gotten really good at it, so we can let you just go from past experience, and I'll take notes like I have in the past.
We're all pros at this by now.
What you're seeing, what you think, why you think you're seeing it, and what sorts of things. Ellen, I'm glad you're back.
I mean, I think the 2 comments that are in here tie back into the committee stuff we talked about of like, it might not be, the transparency might not quite be needed yet, but it's going to become a bigger issue in coming years. So a finance committee, I think, could make sense in the future.
Yeah, and I think for with the referendum when we had the task force, that was a group of really involved individuals in our committee in our community who volunteered their time and really used their interest and their passion for the greater good of the school district to learn more about it, which is absolutely fantastic. And then I know we had 30 plus different public meetings to share kind of the financial impact of what we're going through, and information about the referendum. I think that was pretty well received. I mean, I wasn't at all of them, but it seemed like the ones that I went to, people kind of got it, and they asked really great questions, even if they didn't agree with, even if they didn't necessarily want to vote for or against or a certain way for the referendum or what have you. It at least got it in front of people that here's kind of what we're dealing with, and maybe get some new ideas from folks as well. So I did like going out into the community, sharing where we're at financially. And again, it kind of maybe gets back to a potential committee thing in the future. But just that transparency, I think, is having that ongoing would definitely have a big impact, I think, for folks that are particularly invested in that. And I know you mentioned during the district highlights, Jim, the village group
Mhm.
committee, or the
Yep.
new committee that the village is putting
Form
together.
development.
Yeah, the development one. Even having those conversations at the village level as far as like the financial impact, because we have an impact on our constituents and their taxes, and the village has an impact on like how do they play off of each other, and just kind of bringing that full circle and trying to work together as a unit instead of kind of two separate entities doing their own things could really be helpful too.
One of my takeaways, and we've talked about this previously, but the question on whether or not a community believes the district is responsible steward of its financial resources. Want to make sure that we, now that the referendum has passed, continue to keep the public up to date and educated. So look at, like we talked about, bringing DPI in to talk about public school finance and referenda. But also, some of the things that we cover as updates in here, making sure the public are aware. So if we get grants that cover some of the costs that we were looking at covering with the referendum, making sure that we're communicating those bits as well. I think there's an assumption made that a lot of people pay attention to what we're doing here, and that's just not the case. So making sure that we're continuing to keep an open dialogue with the community and keep them up to date on what's happening.
Eric and I are meeting on the 22nd of May to start mapping out what that could look like, including that Tom discussion.
Okay, cool.
And maybe some of the things you mentioned, Alan, to kind of get back to what Steve had mentioned earlier with the consent agenda, and like the financial just kind of get rolled into that and pushed through. Like the stuff that you just brought up would be potentially something that is called out specifically during like a finance section of our monthly board meetings, of like, hey, we got this, and I know we do that sometimes, like, hey, we got this great grant for X, Y, and Z or what have you. But yeah, just kind of bringing that forward and hearing about that more frequently and regularly could be helpful there as well.
And I think, not that I want to add more, but I think there's kind of similar to the model that we had with the referendum and having public events. I think there's a benefit of, I think in the past, that a district passes their referendum and then the education and the level of communication dies off until the next referendum. And there's definitely a benefit of keeping people, not to the same degree, obviously, but keeping people involved through the process, because it's not going to be the last referendum. And so if you keep people involved and educated, it's all the more benefit in the long run.
So two of the things, when we met with the key communicators, two of the things that we talked about that, and Kelsey did a really nice job articulating this, the tours were really nice because it got people in there and got us talking about where the money goes. The other thing was the did you know posts, and looking still to bring those back. We had a little bit of a exhaustion after the referendum, but I think right now we are starting to get ourselves back into at least those two items to really try to identify, maybe on a quarterly basis, and have those discussions, because the tours aren't just about, here the building. We're talking about where those dollars, the people that those dollars fund. So I think that's been, so I'm piggybacking off what you're saying, because I think that we've been thinking about it as well. Got the long version of what I was getting to. Did you want to? Yeah.
Yeah. That's great, because that's what my brain was just thinking, was like, now that the referendum has passed, we know how much money we're getting each year. We should be sharing exactly where all of that money is going. So it's very, very clear that the money that folks voted for to go to these things are absolutely getting used for those things, and kind of make sure that trust and transparency is very easy to
Well,
find.
that was such a common question too with this referendum was what happened to the money from the last
Right.
referendum.
Right. Yeah.
And it didn't seem like that communication happened a lot between the last referendum and this one.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Eric and I and Chris Armstrong met just actually today about the safety items, and just believe it or not, it's not that big part. It's not the biggest part of the referendum, but even we're working on it. And it actually was a really good meeting because we recognize that, like we all make assumptions of what's clear to people, and we just have to, we're still working at it, but just want you to know that we're on the same page, but we just have to get that stuff out soon. The other piece is the staffing, which is going on right now. So we're pretty excited to be able, and actually part of that was just approved tonight with one of that first art teacher piece, which was an opening created because of the other dollars that we had. Yeah.
Any other discussion about our financials? What are we doing next, Jim? What's
Well,
next on our little voting thing?
I think I have in the. Who knows? You might get done early enough. You might want to do the data right. You do have a link in there, the tool, right? So if you open the tool up, we have talked about data-driven decision, right? We didn't talk about board operations yet, correct? I believe here I've got them all here. We talked about culture. Yep. So we've done 3, right? We've done culture, data-driven, and now the budget. So you have board operations available to you. Planning.
Why don't we do planning? Since
Sure
we're
can.
talking strategic planning committee potentially stuff.
All right.
and There's a lot of planning happening right now. And it's short.
Decision there. Planning. Next.
Looking at you, Alan. That's a short one. There's only 4.
Don't worry, I don't have the Google form up yet, though, Alan.
Can we make a note? I don't know if we're ready for this yet, but I think the community engagement one we should do in August with the school year starting and the community, whatever committee with the village. I can't remember the name right now. And then if we roll into strategic planning with the community, that would give us enough time
August.
to do that ahead of, unless someone wants to object.
Strongly.
My annual board development tool packet. It's interesting when I was at I think the way the board is doing this, Katie and I had this conversation about like the idea of retreats and things like that. And really this is a very slow, long retreat in addition to going to conferences. And I hear other boards that are doing this and they do it and then they move on. I do appreciate the trickle effect.
The slow burn.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments, discussion, or questions from folks before we move on? All right. And what's next in future agenda items?
All right. So we hope to see the Art Fusion folks here next month. German field trip approval. You heard mention of that, so that's coming to us next month. Becca mentioned the approval of the 612 English Language Arts curriculum, which is going to be really exciting to have that common resource. We've been doing this, speaking of slow rolls, we are now turning to coaches pay and advisors pay and really looking to align those up with the other decisions that have been made. And so we'll be bringing that. Bus driver contracts had come in August. We're trying to, now that you've approved the pay, we want to bring the contracts and try to get them back because it tends to be a bit of a scramble. Hopefully the property and vehicle insurance, we will have that in place for next month since we wasn't able to get it tonight. We'll try to give you an update on the safety committee conversation that we talked about. And then the prepayment of debt / budgeting, we're going to come up with a name for it, task force. And really our thinking on that one, just so you know, is also, it's not about this year, it's about principles that can be applied to whatever year, right? And so that's the type of structure we're going to try to bring that plan for you. Restraint and seclusion report, boardsmanship. We did review a collective commitment, so it might be time to possibly be looking at that. Maybe Katie and I can talk about maybe the best time for that to take place. If not, because we'll have to balance that with the annual board development tool as well. and then the athletic and activities handbook. And I do have down student services report, athletic community ed recreation, transportation end of year, and then the district administrator evaluation. So a lot there.
What about human growth and development?
What's
Jim,
that?
what about human growth and development?
Oh, human growth. So Becca and I actually just met about that. Human growth development. Becca is working with Rachel, one of the co-chairs, to put out a doodle for the first, either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday of the first week off from school. We want to try to capture when there's a little bit people have some time and before we lose Anna. So we'll have a board meeting on the 9th, and then we'll have human growth and development, likely one of those three next evenings. They just really have that one time left. It just, we couldn't get that in. So look at human growth and development then soon after.
And we have some more Neola stuff coming down the pike too, also, correct?
Second reading, Neola, thank you.
Yeah.
And potentially a first, depending on how we do. So yes, now adding that in. So some second Neola and a first.
I at some point would like to have an agenda item on instructional hours. Unfortunately, spending a lot of time looking at handbooks from other districts in our area. And I don't want to say the math here because I could be wildly wrong. And I know that happens sometimes when boards talk. They do math and they share things they shouldn't. But it looks like our instructional hours are significantly lower for our classes than neighboring districts. And I think it's partially because we offer 5 blocks a day. Sorry, I'm looking at the high school exclusively. This is not an elementary or middle school concern necessarily, but in the high school, because we have 5 blocks a day and an 8 AB day schedule, our students end up with significantly fewer hours in a 1 credit class than other districts do, like to the tune of a 40 to 50% difference. And Wisconsin, like many states that operate on the school calendar that we do, already has a number of issues with AP tests starting this week. And we are using the late dates for some of these tests, where these students have very shortened time to get through all of that content that they are expected to get through. And it creates problems. And I'm just kind of intrigued why our hours are the way they are. I'd be happy to talk about it with you, Kyle.
You know, and Becca,
No, yeah, I mean, like I said, this was this week looking at how schools dealt with the PE waiver and stuff. I mean, our instructional hours are 79 minutes per class, approximately 45 to 44 days per semester. New Glarus's instructional hours are 62 minutes per class, over 75 days, and that ends up being a little over 10,900 minutes, and ours are at 6,900 minutes.
So we
That's
can
just a big discrepancy in instruction. But I'm talking about year-long class. That's year-long classes only.
So there is actually.
Okay, we can certainly dig into it. I mean, the other semester schools around are significant.
So every year we, just like every other district, have to do a spreadsheet calculation with DPI. It's a form that we plug all the information in, spits out the numbers. We could actually reach out to some other districts to get those numbers for comparisons. I do know that I came from a district where the secondary was living on a razor's edge after the second snow day. We have a lot, because we actually go an extra almost 25 more minutes than I'm used to at the secondary level. So from my experience, I've actually come to a place where there's actually a buffer. I enjoy it quite a bit. So we can get some data, though. I think it'll be informative. And Becca and I can start that conversation because she works in, she could probably even tuck that into that student services report next month.
Yeah, and again, the reason I mention this for the other board members who aren't looking at this type of scheduling thing, I think for good logistical purposes, like our calc class for AP sits across both A days and B days to get enough hours in. And that seems to be necessary. When you look at what the AP recommendations, they recommend 10,000 minutes of instruction for an AP class. And that's, if we're not providing enough opportunity for that. And this is why a number of states, their students benefit in AP scores. And you can see this because they start school early in August. So they have a whole month of lead time before this deadline. And again, there was tests today. So those students have another almost 26 days in the school year. Is that where the countdown's at? 20 days? Left that they are.
About 17. It's about 17. It's about 17, I think.
Yeah, you don't come on Saturday.
Which letter in the alphabet are you on that right now, Kelsey? It's like, yes.
Okay. Well, just one thing that struck me was that we have so many periods in our day that it may be a challenge.
Yeah, I think so. There's a calculation that's done. It's pretty strict where you take the beginning end of the day, you take your passing times, you throw in a couple other things like lunch, and we can get some numbers from some neighboring districts. I can reach out to get those. That's not a problem. But I do think we had even when we looked at potential closure days, I knew we had a lot to spare, both at the elementary and secondary. And typically, like I said, my experience at the secondary runs out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and my concern is more about time in individual classes than total number of hours. We get plenty of total number of hours. It's just that how much we're getting in individual classes.
So we can build that in. Where did I leave off? Was that?
I think you had ended your
Did I get
agenda
okay.
item list, and then we
There you
started
go.
adding to it.
It's a big long list. It took a while just to read it.
All right. How about future board meetings?
Well, we do have the board meeting on June 9th, which is the day after graduation. And then we do have, so we have no other special board meetings coming up, and then we have the committee meetings that I shared in the district administrative report.
All right. Any questions or comments from the board at all? All right. And next up is a possible closed session, and I will contemplate a motion to enter closed session. I'll make a motion to enter closed session under Wisconsin statute 19.85, subsection 1C, D, E, F, and for consideration, including action if appropriate regarding employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of potential employees, non-union wages, discussion and potential action regarding employee disciplinary issues, letters of assurance, and employment summary offers.
I'll second.
Motion made by Katie. Yeah. Made by Katie, seconded by Beth. Any further questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, can we take a roll call vote for that, please, Marion?
Meg Anthony,
Yes.
Alan Charles,
Yes.
Steve Elliott,
Yes.
Ryan Kubley,
Yes.
Marion Finney, yes, Katie Worley,
Yes.
Beth Years,
Yes.
7 in favor.
All right, we are entering closed session at 9:38 p.m.